Going to start the meeting off. I'll reopen the meeting with just brief introductions. I think you probably met all the board members, but we'll do it one more time. Just
Fine.
Mr. O'Leary.
Yeah. Tom, Steve O'Leary.
Nice to see
I've
you.
been on the board off and on, but mostly since 1988.
Very good.
Again, I appreciate your candidacy and willingness to come and serve, and look forward to some dialogue tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Durkin, I'm Jeff Ewell. I'm newly elected to the Office of Selectman. I also served the term back in 2009 through 12. I thank you for coming forward and being a candidate for the TA position in this wonderful town of ours.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
We've met as a member of the screening committee, Bob Messeri. I'm now chairman of the Board of Selectmen. I've been
good.
on the board. This is going on to my 11th year.
Very good. Thank you.
Michael Prisco, the vice chair of the committee now with the reorg. Thank you for going through the process. I know it's been somewhat lengthy. This is, I think, your third appearance.
It's all right.
Once with the screening committee and once with us. So thank you for the investment you made in the process, and we really do appreciate the time.
Well, thank you.
Joe Fode, we met at the screening committee. We met for several years prior. We worked together
Right.
in Chelsea, and we have a relationship on the MWA Board of Directors. Year-wise, I'm the junior guy on the board. As Jeff pointed out, even though he's newly elected, he did serve a term prior. So I guess I'm the new kid on the block. So
All right.
thank you for coming forward, and I wish you a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for the introductions.
Mrs. Olson.
Hi, I'm Allison Olson, Human Resources.
Hi. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
She's also acting as our recording secretary this evening.
Fine.
Thank you, Allison. Okay, let's get started. Protocol is going to be, we have a number of questions to ask, similar to what the steering committee did. In the process of your response, there will be follow-up to each question. At the end, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions and make a closing statement.
Very good.
So, Tom, starting off, please tell us about yourself and why you think you would be the best choice for North Reading's new town administrator.
Well, thank you. Again, let me say how much I appreciate the professionalism and the courtesy that you've shown me through this process, and I appreciate that. My name is Tom Durkin. I'm 52 years old. My wife and I live at the end of Elm Street, a few houses, fewer than a dozen, into West Peabody, where we've lived our whole lives. We have 2 children, college age, and we make it through our days. When I first came into government, when I first started, some 20 years ago, someone told me that this agency was here before you came, and it'll be here long after you leave. All we can hope to do is to leave it a little better than we found it. And that has been sort of my guiding principle in the communities that I've worked and where I work now, and the guiding principle for the work I would do for you. There's so much that's right with North Reading. I think I can help you build on that. And for the challenges that we'll face ahead, I think I can help you with those as well. Thank you for the opportunity to be a candidate and for your consideration. I've shown you in my resume some of the differences in the communities that I've worked, the different challenges. Having worked in my hometown as treasurer in the city of Peabody, there were certain challenges that I faced there. And then when I went to the city of Beverly, moving from treasurer to finance director, there were additional responsibilities, and a new world opened up to me about municipal finance and the particulars of budgets and all that a treasurer wouldn't have seen, and that was very professionally rewarding. I'll be using those experiences. And then when I came to Chelsea and became deputy city manager and was responsible for, as you can imagine, a diverse, complex community, but not a lot different from any other community. Budgetary challenges, challenges with environmental issues, all of the things that I think that I've read in your master plan and in our meetings prior to this one, the kinds of challenges that we'll be facing. So in those different communities that I've worked, and most recently with the Mass Water Resources Authority, dealing with larger budgets and larger infrastructure, and working with the state and the legislature, I think that those different kinds of experiences will be helpful for the challenges that North Reading will be facing.
Follow-up questions? Mr. Prisco?
Just, actually, something for NORCAM. Can we get the speakers turned down in the room, because it's causing a little bit of an echo? It's really, it's hard for me to hear. I don't know about anyone else, but I'm having a hard time hearing, so if we could just turn those speakers down a little bit, I'd appreciate it. Sorry, that was all.
Any other follow-up questions at this point? Getting off easy. Mr. Fode?
Tom, in order of importance, what steps will you take to assure your transition into our community is successful?
I think that in the beginning, it would be very important to get to know more, like we did in the tour, who the people are, where the places are, and what the issues are. I've made an effort reading as much as I can and visiting the website and talking to people I know, but still, there is a whole lot more. Now, I don't plan to ever know as much as, say, you, Mr. O'Leary, for having lived here so long, but I will make an effort to know the community as well as anyone could, and that's a pledge that I'd make to you. I would plan to immerse myself. You'll see me at band concerts, you'll see me at sporting events, you'll see me in the town as much as I think you need to, and to really be part of the community, to get to know the community. You have expressed, and I believe it strongly, that input and sincere receipt of that input, really listening to what people have to say, fundamentally, what they mean, what they're saying, requires a commitment to understand the community. So that's why I would plan first to immerse myself and to get to know the community. The next steps would be to develop what you have as an agenda, to help you, to best bring best business practices and the resources to the five of you, to help you make decisions and to help guide me as I help you go forward. And I suppose the third step would be to reinvigorate that same process, to continue to be immersed in the community, to understand it, because communities are changing and priorities will be changing. We can't rest back. So in this sort of cycle of continual improvement, I think that I would continue to add more and more value as I became more and more familiar, and as you became more familiar with me, and we could work together. So I would say that it's the first step is to understand the community, that's the immersion. The second step would be to help develop improvements on what we've already got so well going on here. And then the third would be to continue to reinvest in that same process.
Follow-ups? I have one. Associated with your process, tell me a little bit about how you would engage and develop relationships with your direct reports, department heads, and the balance of town employees.
Yeah. The success that I've had in this kind of role has always first depended on trust. That there needs to be a relationship built on trust and candor. So I would start there. I would be very interested in hearing about what they think I can do to help, what they think they can do to improve. So often, it's the very people who are doing these jobs. I've met some of the well-qualified and very nice people the other day that I was here, and was impressed with their eagerness to get back to the work, to tell you the truth. They were very nice, and we shook hands and all, and off they went back. And they appeared to me to be the kind of people I'm familiar with working, that they know so much about what they're doing, that if we can listen to them with a real, and I mean sincerely, a respect for the work that they're doing and the insights they have, that's how I would begin to develop that kind of process. To be clear about what my direction is. I don't think hot tempers are helpful. I think that just clear, dispassionate direction has always been my approach, because it's the one I most appreciated, when I was working. So those are two of the ways that I would start developing relationships with the people who report up.
Anyone else? You gonna let me ask all the questions now?
Sure.
I think you're well aware that most of our town employee base is unionized, and there's several different unions. and,
Naturally.
Tell us a little bit about how you would approach that. Let me give you just a little heads up. Uh, The intent was, and may still be, that contracts are settled through the end of fiscal 2015. But during this period of time, you would have to engage with all the unions associated with what normally would be a 3-year contract. We settled most of them with a 1-year in anticipation of the change in town administrator.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about how you would approach that.
Let me begin by saying that while I haven't been a union member myself, I do sincerely believe in the honor of collective bargaining. And it is that respect for unionism that allows me to negotiate, to settle small disputes all the way through arbitration, and I'll tell you some more about my experiences through all of that kind of process. But it really is a respect for people who want to organize and argue, really, for better benefits and working conditions. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that where some frustration comes, and I feel it too, is in the implementation of that, in the practice of that, in the everyday living in that kind of unionized environment. It is the environment that I work in now and have been most comfortable my whole life. The successes that I've had come first from that respect and from clarity, that there are expectations and that the expectations need to be met. And if they're clearly enunciated and the direction is clear, the unionized workforce has always responded well for me. I have negotiated with difficult unions. I like to name the Chelsea Fire Department, for example. I don't know of a tougher union in all of America. But when you look at them and talk with them about the issues and about the reasonableness of requests, we were able to hammer out an agreement. Understanding that it doesn't do any good for management to have animosity towards unionized workers or the process. We have to respect the process. It can be laborious and it can be frustrating. All of the steps, typically, I haven't seen all of your contracts, but typically there would be the step 1 process and a step 2, and then there's a review to step 3, and then you have some arbitration, and if you don't like arbitration, you end up going further up into the state and to the courts. I haven't had to do a lot of that, though I have. I've been able to resolve many of these things while the fire is only an ember. And it's the success of working with the people, walking around, and talking with them about what it is they're troubled with before it becomes a real issue that has been the best. The old adage about a stitch in time saves 9. It really works in the workplace with a unionized environment. I've had experience in negotiating contracts with administrative staff and with police and police superiors, and they all have a different requirement. You know, they have different agendas and different things that they're interested in and different priorities as you talk about it. Sometimes wages needs to, the economic issues come right up front. Sometimes it's not. And I've had a lot of success in working through those negotiations to settlements. And I'd like to do that for you.
Thank you. Further follow-up on that question?
I have one.
Mr. Prisco.
So I see you've moved a little bit in your career, but not a tremendous amount, which is nice. It's great to see that you've certainly been dedicated to the towns and cities that you work for.
Thank you.
So you obviously gone through transitions with those. When you're in your career, in your transition, because obviously you're sitting in a very important job now. During your transitions, did you take any steps immediately when you moved in and made change, or has your style been more, get in, take your time, and make change slowly? And really looking more from an efficiency standpoint, have you ever come in through your transition steps and found efficiencies right away and tried to implement them? And then just trying to get a feel for what your style would be.
Sure. I have done what has been required. I'm not afraid to come in and make change. It's not the preferred method, I wouldn't think. You would hope to come into a situation that was somewhat stable and somewhat organized, and I can tell that what writing is. There are some subtle things that you can do to make improvements. I will give you one of my very first examples, working in the treasurer's office in Peabody. there was, and this is a true story, a former treasurer. He was 93 years old and volunteered every day from about 10 o'clock until noon. And he would assist with the reconciliations. And I was a bit timid, in my late 30s, to challenge someone who had a wonderful reputation, albeit getting elderly. And I talked to him about what he thought about, and frankly, we used these big pieces of paper. Can't even find them anymore. Big pieces of paper where the bank accounts were down here and the dates were across here. And where those intersected, we would put, the bookkeeper would put the different activity. So it was a positive number or a negative number, a positive number and a negative number. And you can know your position at the end of the day, or you could know your position across the columns. But when I saw this and thought, well, this is really what a spreadsheet can do, why aren't we using spreadsheets? And more to the point, why aren't we using a database, which is ultimately what we went with, to collect this information, to organize it more quickly, and to have reconciliations more timely, more accurately. Although accuracy was really pretty good. He was very good. And I explained to him right away that I saw this as an inefficiency, and that I was concerned about the timeliness and accuracy, a couple of fundamental points in finance. And he agreed. Just didn't know what the solution was. Wished that there was a better way than to have to go through the papers and the adding machines and the tape. So I showed him this. And I implemented a more sophisticated, but still fundamentally the same. And we're still transactions and we're still tracking all of that. But I did that right away because I knew that was something that was important to do. In other things, I had planted the seed and watered it and cared for it until it grew into something that we could see was an improvement. I think in the Treasury and at the MWRA, we've done that, and I would point to our compliance. You can imagine a state agency with over $6 billion in debt and with hundreds of business partners, bankers and lawyers, that in all of the documentation, we make commitments to do certain things. We will send you our financial statements. We'll send you a quarterly report. We'll send you this and send you that. There was no real organization to that. There was someone making an effort, and I'm convinced that the effort was very good, but I thought it needed to be better. And slowly, I worked with him. This is one of those where you plant the seed. And we began to record as we signed new documents. Every time we did a bond deal, I would make a note. What have we now committed to? And slowly, over the course of 3 years, we had enough information so that now we could implement what I think is an airtight, waterproof compliance program. So I think, Selectman, that it depends on what's required. I'm not afraid to come in. I prefer not to be the bull in the china shop, though, frankly, and I hope that you can appreciate that, that you rustle some feathers that stay ruffled for a long time, and I have no intention of doing that. My hope is, and my sense is here, that listening and learning for a short period of time would be the best approach in the beginning, because I see so much right about what's going on, but with an ear and an eye to where I can add some value and to make improvements without ruffling feathers and hurting feelings and insulting coworkers. That wouldn't be my intention. But to provide some leadership and to show why some improvements that I'm observing should and can be made, and how to. And I love to lead through all of that. When we ended with the compliance program, I hear people in the Treasury now raving about it. And it's nice to know. Same with the computerized transactions in the Treasurer's office. And they still use that program, by the way.
Thank you. Further questions, Mr. O'Leary?
Tom, I saw in your resume, and knew anyway that you, when you went from Peabody, you went to Beverly.
Yes.
And again, there must have been a transition there because there was a change in administration there.
Yes.
At the top, mayor, obviously, then chose you to come in and replace someone else too. So there must have been a transition
Yes.
period there. Could you just fill us in a little bit as to how that went? Because that was a very political environment
Mm-hmm.
as far as your new boss.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
the people that were at City Hall, again, were many from the old administration. So how did that work out, and how did you transition into that?
Let me first describe the situation. In my very first job in government, I worked for Essex County. It's so long ago, and it doesn't make it onto my resume. It's about 4 positions back. But it's where I got my start and learned an awful lot. I worked for the advisory board, which was one selectman, typically the chairman, from one of the towns, or the mayor from the city, of all of the 34 cities and towns in Essex County. And they were the appropriating authority for the county. The county ran the agricultural school and the maintenance of the courthouses and some other things. And I was their budget analyst. It was an entry-level position, and I was really new to it, and they sort of took a chance on me, and I'm still grateful for that opportunity. But I reported directly to the chairman of this body of 34 people, and it was Peter Theresian, the mayor of Peabody, my hometown, part of why I applied for the job. And listened a lot, and worked from Essex County in Peabody City Hall up to the treasurer's job. Now, the treasurer's job was still a challenge, and still they took a bit of a chance on me. But I learned the job and worked for Peter Theresian from that beginning, who really became my mentor, one of the longest-serving mayors in Massachusetts, worked through until the time he decided to retire. At the time that he was retiring, over in the next town over, in the city of Beverly, the longstanding mayor, quite a good mayor, William Scanlon, had been defeated. And they were advertising for a finance director's job. Now, when you're treasurer, finance director is the next position up. And I always wanted to take my career to the next level. Knowing that my mentor and boss was leaving and that there was an opportunity right next door, I applied for that job, and Mayor Tom Crean, who has just been elected, hired me. So in the transition, there was some instability with what was the feelings in City Hall, and I could sense that. It was a new job for me. Now I was supervising assessors and data processing, so it was more than just finance. Then there were some financial components that were different. Beverly has an airport enterprise. They have a golf course. It's a little bit different, things to learn. So in my transitioning and in the community's transitioning, I think it worked very well. I developed a relationship with the city council where I had to present the administration's initiatives, typically alone. There was some political problems that I knew that the mayor was having with the city council. I tried to mitigate those by being a buffer in between, seemed to be effective, and I went along. Here comes the election, the next election, where my boss, Mayor Tom Crean, is running against William Scanlon, who is coming back, and William Scanlon defeats him. 2 years. One term my mayor had. William Scanlon comes back. Now, I had always had the greatest respect because my boss, Peter Theresian, did, and I would work with Mayor Scanlon when he was on the Essex County Advisory Board. I actually worked for him and found him to be quite a good manager and had no reason to be political about this. It wasn't about me at all. And Mayor Scanlon offered me to lunch. We went to lunch. He quite candidly told me he appreciated my work, but that he was bringing back his team. Now, that was difficult. It wasn't because of performance, and it wasn't anything else. He reassured me, offered me some time to find a new job. Those 2 years were difficult. Difficult for Beverly, difficult for the people in Beverly. And we hired a new assessor. There were some changes in the assessor's office, and there had been some need for some reorganization, and we did a little bit of that. We separated the accounting department for budget and accounting. Seemed to be effective. But it was a hard time of transition. But we continued. We got free cash certified for the very first time. We had our unions negotiated and settled, and we got through those 2 years, I think, effectively, though the voters didn't think so. So that's kind of the story about that transition. Back to Selectman Prisco's question about how did I deal with it? Was it right away or was it deferred? In that case, it was more listen, because this city hall was very different from the city hall I had worked in. The city hall I had worked in, things were smooth as glass. In Beverly, there were some pieces that needed to be put together, and I needed to learn about that. And when I did, we put it together, and I think we fared pretty well. That would be my story about that transition.
Well, I knew it was a short stint. And I
Nearly
knew
2
It
years.
would be tumultuous, so I was just
Yeah,
curious.
it was. It was.
Excuse me.
It tempered me, in my professional career. That was a difficult 2 years. But, sometimes in these situations, it's the time when you can learn the most, make the most improvements. Mayor Crean was brand new to the budgetary process, and we didn't have a balanced budget, and we needed to have one. We refer to it as the hamburger meeting because I asked them not to leave until we were done. So we sent out next door for hamburgers and ate them there at the desk, and we continued. And we worked on the budget, and we worked on the budget until it was balanced, and we got it done. That was tough.
Thank you. I think it's your turn.
Oh, my turn, okay. Could you please tell us about your leadership skills and how you have applied them in budget discussions, contract negotiations, personnel issues, and problem solving? You touched on some of it.
Yeah. My take on leadership starts first with me, myself, and trying to set an example. And through an example of timeliness and hard work and effort and a sincere respect for other people's opinions, that you can demonstrate a standard. You don't even have to say, this is the standard I expect. It sort of goes unspoken. And it sets a tone for everyone else that you work with. And I have found dealing with even the most boisterous firefighters and the toughest policemen that if, and in this case I do, respect the work that they do, respect the points that they have, validate the points that are valid, and challenge the ones that I don't agree with in a respectful manner, that the leadership comes out and that you can come to a solution. I have found that dealing with people, rather than push them or pull them, leadership is really to guide them. Show them the direction, not by having to say it, but by demonstrating it yourself. By pointing out what's good, gently talking about what needs to improve, and coming to a consensus is the very best way. So I prefer to lead in that style. It has served me well so far, whether it's with unions or with business leaders. All of the people that I have worked with in my municipal leadership career, that's the approach I've taken.
Just in relation to personnel issues, how have you, what have you had to deal with?
Yeah.
How have you dealt with it?
Okay. I have had to deal with a number of different personnel issues. Some of them are terrific. When you get to promote somebody, that's a wonderful feeling. When you get to recognize great performance or a really outstanding effort, that's wonderful, but it isn't always that. I have, while supervising, I've had one man go blind, and the accommodations we had to make for him and the difficulty that you can imagine that situation causes an employee. I have stood beside people with addiction and substance abuse. Sometimes we've come out of those successfully and sometimes not. I have dealt with the difficulties of having to dismiss people, and I mean higher ups, I mean deputy fire chiefs. I've had a lot of adversity that I've had to deal with, but I prefer to think of it rather as a tempering, that it really hasn't diminished my optimistic outlook or this respect that I have for people. It hasn't. It has given me some insights and some experience and has prepared me, I think, to help you with we don't know what's coming down the road.
Just to follow up, along the same lines of problem solving and leadership, can you give us an example of a problem that you had to solve non-labor related in your career? Any one of the towns or your current position, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I can tell you that we have had different situations in Chelsea that have to do with scheduling. One of the challenges was in our E911. It's civilianized, and it became difficult to staff it with qualified people. We had different hours, 8 to 4, 4 to 8, and 8, 11 comes back around to the clock, 24 hours. And what I found successful in that situation was to have the input from the police chief and the fire chief and the E911 director. We had an emergency management director. And to coordinate them and to talk about what would be the most effective schedule. Would we have shifts that were different? Would it all be changing at the same time? And we ultimately came up with a standardized schedule, but with flexibility as to days. And it worked out well, and it's well-staffed now. It had not been. It was costing an awful lot in overtime. As you can imagine, people were getting burned out. We don't want people doing more than 2 shifts at a time. We were able to get a really well-organized, not because it was my idea, but because I brought the police chief, fire chief, and E911 director in, and we together figured it out. And we saved a lot on overtime. We actually created a model to forecast where overtime ought to be. We were reasonable about it, and we were monitoring the E911 director's performance on overtime, and he knew that we were watching, and it came down. There was a better feeling in the E911 department among the employees. The reports from the police and fire chief was that it was effective and better. So I think that that was a success. There have been small ones, too. In Chelsea, we tried to make the point that we were, some people are a bit critical, but environmentally sensitive. You know, in an urban area with a lot of car congestion. Well, I had heard about a hybrid vehicle. And I have to put this in perspective. They're common now, but they weren't so common back 10 years ago. So I thought, well, we've got a vehicle going up and down Broadway and elsewhere all day long, ticketing and metering, and thought, why don't we use a hybrid for that? So I asked the procurement person, do you think you could find one of those Toyota Prius, I think it's called? And we did, and we put a big leaf sticker on it and labeled it City of Chelsea, Parking Enforcement, and it was quiet. People appreciated it. They were even kind of curious about it. And I think it added to our credibility that we, the administration, were concerned and committed to better environment. So there's a couple of examples where I worked for solutions. And that solution, once again, didn't come from my idea. I had thought about the car, but wasn't sure it was really going to work. Had to understand what the mechanics would have planned for it because we had a mechanics bay. And I didn't want to just introduce a new car and make his life miserable and inefficient. But he was all for it, thought it was interesting. Worked with the other stakeholders about that, and we implemented it. There's an example.
Thank you. Michael?
On this board, many of us have a different opinion about employee recognition, recognizing the employees. You know, I'm certainly probably on one end more than some are on the other. I'm a believer that, you know, you give a lot more to the ones that really earn it. But in this particular town, we don't have a tremendous amount of money set aside for employee recognition.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, in your experience with your career, how have you been involved with and how have you executed employee recognition, especially when you don't have a tremendous budget to do anything, maybe even no money at all? But have you found ways to, you know, simple ways, maybe even some little things that you have done or have seen in your career that you may even bring here as one of your leadership skills?
Yeah. In the city of Peabody, and I brought with me to the city of Beverly, an employer recognition program. It began with mere recognition for longevity. That's kind of a simple classic example where we're recognizing 5 years and 10 years, recognizing the importance of staying, and once you've been trained, longevity is a value to management and it should be encouraged. We had an employee of the year, we had employee of the month, and we would try to find interesting and above and beyond efforts to recognize. It gets a bit difficult. You know, it seems that very often the kinds of work that lend themselves to particular successes attract that attention, and I tried to make it diverse, you know, so that finance would be recognized, but so would public safety and so would DPW, and to find interesting ways to recognize the work that they were doing. I did that. Finally, in our last years in Peabody, we implemented actually merit pay for managers outside of the collective bargaining groups. That was implemented with some moderation. We were afraid that it would be viewed as political and favoritism, and when you start down that road with people's pay, you know, it really can backfire on you. Not that I am opposed to merit pay. It works quite well in the private industry, obviously. Goes without saying. But in the public arena, we need to be careful about how we do that. In the collective bargaining situations, it's difficult, though not impossible, for managers. I'd be interested in hearing more about what you five think about that and to offer some of my perspectives on that. I'd be willing to try it, though I'm not completely sold that the experiences I've had have been better in terms of better output, better employee satisfaction, and all of the measures that you would measure employee efficiency and success. I'm not sure that they contributed a whole lot to that. That may be a lack in measuring techniques. I think we could have improved on that, and I'd be willing to do more of that here. I think that recognizing good work doesn't necessarily have to be a pin or a flower, you know, in a gathering on a Friday. I think that effective recognition can be a handwritten note. and I'm kind of fond of that approach, or to actually come down as the TA and recognize in person. That's nice work. We got those bills out on time, and I know the machine broke and we had to stay late. And I want you to know that I appreciate that. That goes a long way. I'm not opposed to investigating further, and I'd like to have more of a conversation if we get the opportunity to talk about what you see. I'm optimistic that I'm certain that recognition is vital. I'm not sure in what form. I've seen a lot of different forms. I like the 5-year, 10-year recognition. It's a time to get together and to celebrate someone's years of service. I think I would like to do that if we don't do it already, to continue that or to start that. But how far into actual recognition with dollars, I'd like to talk more about that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any further follow-up questions?
Just one other,
Mr. O'Leary?
as far as experiences working with specifically school departments,
Hmm.
Pie is only so big, and we look at it as one pie here,
Okay.
and we divvy it up.
Yeah.
I know as treasurer or finance director, you've obviously had some discussions with school department, but I don't know how intimately involved you've been and
Yeah.
how that's worked for you.
Yeah, quite a great deal, actually. When I came to Beverly, I had an opportunity to meet a fellow named Mark Abrams. He was a consultant, an accountant consultant, who actually worked with, back then, the Department of Education on the per pupil spending and the new ed reform laws. And he would host these once a summer, all day, net school spending calculation and formula, and show us where, admittedly, some of the inefficiencies were. And I became sort of a student as to how those calculations come about. They come about from the forecasting of motor vehicle excise for a community. That was something that was new to me, something that the DOE doesn't necessarily publish, the nuances of the formulas. And it gave me a new sort of perspective when I was in Beverly about the challenges of budgeting for schools. Do we want to merely hold the school department to the minimum required contribution, the minimum effort? Or do we want to, as you're describing, and as I've read we do here in North Reading, is to think of it as a department and to manage the priorities, to not think of the school department as this enemy where we need to hold them to this rigid minimum, but rather as a cooperative effort to describe, we have limited resources, we're in favor of what you're doing and want to support it, and we mean that quantitatively. And it gave me a whole new appreciation for dealing with the school departments. I dealt with Superintendent Bill Lupini, who's now in Brookline. He did a wonderful job in Beverly, working with me to develop what he needed for a budget. And really what became the most effective way was to put our cards on the table and start with, here's where state aid is going to be, here's where our property tax limitations are, here's where all of the others, motor vehicle excise and the rest, are. What do you need? And we would begin to zero in on, here's what we as the city, in my opinion, my recommendation to the mayor and the council was, here's where we can be, dollar-wise, and here's where the school needs to be. And then right at the edges, let the political leaders determine where we're going to be. But to work that out, and that's what I did. That was the most eye-opening experience I had in that role, was actually working with the school department, someone cooperatively. Maybe it was the nature of my old boss in Peabody, maybe it was the nature of the culture, but it was like the schools in the general, we even had names for it. There's the general side and the school side. And the idea that there would be some cooperation really was out of the question. It was more like, let's see what we can give them that still meets what the community needs, because everybody's interested in that. But to fight about it, I sort of abandoned that approach, with due respect to my mentor, and adopted what I think was a more cooperative and collegial way of laying your cards on the table, describing, here are our challenges, what are your challenges, what do you need, and coming to a point and agreeing on a dollar. And that was where I really first got a lot of experience, admittedly the hard way, through hard work in Beverly. So I'm quite comfortable with school budgets. Have been since then, all the way through Chelsea, where it was quite amicable dealing with the schools. A bit complicated there because we had Boston University under contract to serve as the school department. They were quite easy to work with, and we had sort of general rules of how we would develop the budget. You know, if Chapter 70 came in higher, then they would benefit from it. And it worked quite well, and I expect it would work well here.
And just in relation to Peabody, though, didn't the mayor serve on the school committee?
Yes, he did. Isn't that ironic? Mm-hmm.
Right, that's what I'm,
Yes, yeah, that added a whole complexity to it. He would be bringing sort of the news to the school department. Here's what it's going to be. And the other school committee members, as you can imagine, that political environment, would fight about that. And I'd hear about it the next day. You know, how'd the school committee go, Mayor? Well, it went kind of tough, but I told him this is that. And okay, you know, he's the boss, he knows. He's much better at this and doing it a lot longer than I am. But I always thought that in that case, maybe it's because I had some little kids and I was concerned about their educations. They were in the public schools and I had gone to the public school. Maybe that isn't the best approach. And that's where I developed my approach in Beverly, and it seems to be the one that you folks use here, and I'd like to join you in that.
Jeffrey?
Yes. Actually, your finishing comment basically answered my question about your experience in being able to work with the schools versus town government and put them together. You seem to answer that question for me, and I thank you for that. The other thing is, I noticed that you use the word "we" a lot. I think that I appreciate that.
Oh, well, thank you.
It is a
Yeah.
"we" thing, not an "I" thing. I mean,
Yeah.
you do have your role as an "I," and we know that, but the "we" is very, very, it's an inclusive word, and I think that's really good.
Well, thanks for saying that, too. Part of the reason that I evolved from merely interested in this position and evolved into committing to applying to be a candidate was having read the documents that you put out. The master plan was a real eye-opener for me, because that's where I understood that maybe I fit here, that there is a more cooperative, or at least a desire to cooperate. You know, I know that there will be disagreements, there always are with people, but that there was a commitment to cooperate to the degree that you can. It was demonstrated too, all of you, when we went on our tour. You know, never did we see somebody who, you know, wanted to take you by the neck and tell you how bad things were. That's not how it was here. And it put me at ease that this is more like my style, where we all know that there are constraints in the resources. And it seemed that everybody knew that, whether it was at the library or at the senior center. You know, but can we take a minute and tell you more about our priorities and help you find in the pecking order where we can fit? You know, I have no problem with advocating for being higher in the priority list. That's what you're supposed to do. But it was never with any animosity. And I really appreciated that, and it continued to make me more optimistic about my fit here.
So in light of the "we," the question that I have for you is, what will you expect from us as we all collectively work together with you?
I would ask you for clear direction. I think that there will be, let me be frank, a unique relationship. And the uniqueness comes from the fact that I'll be working for the board, all 5 of you collectively. But not just that. I'll be working for you individually, and individually wanting to know what's on your mind and your mind. And we'll have no part in any marginalization of any of you, or participate in the workings of the selectmen as they discuss and deliberate. I'll be an active participant. I plan to bring best practices and recommendations to help you in your deliberation all the way to the end. But I'm sure, won't there be, where there are times when it won't be unanimous. Well, how do I take direction when it's not unanimous? Because if it's 3 and 2 or 4 and 1, I'm not going to participate in marginalizing the 1. I still work for the 1 at the same time that I work for all 5. So I would say that what I would most appreciate is just some clarity. If you disagree, I understand that. I expect that. That's part of democracy, and that's how that works. It really wouldn't be right if it were unanimous all the time, would it? So just some clear direction. And understand, would you please, the majority, that there will be some times when I will continue to listen to the minority because I want to listen to them not because I'm being disrespectful to the will of the board if it's not unanimous. So I think that if you understand my point, which is that I recognize that I work for individuals and for all five at the same time and how difficult that can be, if you just be clear to me about what you expect, I think it'd work wonderfully.
Well, to follow up with that, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, that you're right, there are five of us, it's not a mayor, we're all one-fifth mayors, so to
Yes.
speak, all right? So, and we all have one vote, and collectively we come up hopefully with a very good decision. And as you, in your position as TA, I think we'll, from time to time, individually, we're going to come into you and we're going to speak to you.
I would expect
All
so.
right. In some instances, there may be a questionable situation for you where you have to say, well, wait a minute, maybe this should be coming from the board, maybe this should be coming from the chairman, rather than on an individual basis.
Mhm.
Usually, I think an individual selectman should come to you for maybe fact-finding information. try to
Agreed.
Understand clarification.
Yes, and
so on.
they're welcome.
And those are the things. But how do you deal with when you come to a situation where you say, geez, I just don't know whether I should be answering this person or that should be coming from the chairman himself?
I think I would, let's use you and I as an example. I would tell you frankly that what can I do to help you formulate your position? What can I do to help you convince your colleagues of your position? But it has to end there, Selectman. And respectfully, take the help that I've given you and your expertise and do the work of a selectman and convince the others. Let me know how I can help you. I want to help you and I will help you. And I've told you that even if you're in the minority, I will help you. I will help you formulate and make your case. I will make the snowballs for you, but the snowball fight is yours to fight. And I would respect that here in the board, and I know that I can tell already that you'd respect that of me, that my ability to help you ends at a certain point. You know, it ends sort of where that green cloth is. You know, let me help you as much as I can. Let me help you formulate your issue. I will help you that. I'd even role play it with you, to help you work out the best way to phrase it. But it's up to you to convince your colleagues. And if a colleague has, and understand that if a colleague comes to me with the very same situation on the other side of an issue, I'm going to help them too. I'm going to help them with the same fervor that I helped you. And I'm going to help them as much as I can, not to defeat you, but maybe to convince you and help you to convince them. And hopefully in that democracy that you'll find common ground. I think that's the best way. If you know what my expectation is that you'll understand that's how I see the role. And I pledge to you that's how I'll execute.
Follow-up, anybody? Mr. O'Leary?
Just as a little follow-up, first of all, I hope if you're successful that you can get some clear direction from us. 'Cause that's not always an easy task. I'm
Yeah,
gonna show you.
I expect that too. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, he may get clear direction, but 5 different directions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you'll be pulled in.
5 roads.
All right, well put.
We'll be pulled in several
That's
different
okay.
directions.
That's part of it.
And again, just from experience, we've seen past administrators really do get in a tug of war in relation to monopolization of time by individual members over other members, feelings of, favoritism and
Okay.
things of that nature, and it's hard to avoid. And then it's also, as far as the resources of the office, how they're committed and how they're expended can sometimes lead to some criticism.
Yeah.
Even in the most recent situation we had. I don't know if you've read up on it or not, I assume. that
I
you
have indeed,
you know.
sure.
And, so it wasn't easy, it hasn't been easy,
Mhm.
and I like your explanation and your approach, but I don't know how realistic that really can be.
Yeah.
So in light of my comments, what do you have to say?
Yeah.
You know?
I will validate the difficult part. It is difficult. And it will cause you to be frustrated with me occasionally when I tell you, I have another appointment, or I've helped you as much as I can. I'll see you Monday night, and I wish you the best with the issue. Let me know if there's something at the last minute that I can help you with. I want to help and will help. I think that you'll find that my approach of, and I mean this respectfully, is that we will be less friends and more colleagues. That I don't expect to develop friendships. I expect to develop respect, mutual respect. I expect to have open and candid dialogue. But I won't have a problem, sincerely, I won't have a problem with being judicious about how much of the TA's time and resources are devoted to anyone, because I think it needs to be fair. And I would pledge to you and commit now that it will be fair across U5. I don't know how more simple to put it. I'm committed to that, because I think that in the long term, and my hope is to be here a while, is that longevity will require respect from all 5 of you individually and collectively. And the way you do that is with day-to-day judicious disbursement of resources, and always with this reminder, I'm sort of looking at you, Selectman, because you asked me the question, but I'm only looking at you because I will be reminding you of that. If I think that the relationship is getting a little bit too, you're in here every day and we've settled the issue and I know that we're going over the same kinds of things, at the risk of upsetting you and at the risk of even possibly insulting you, and I hope you won't be because I'm going to be clear about it, is that I will be judicious that way. I think that's what you expect. I think that's what you deserve. And I think in the long run, that's the best way I can serve you in the 2 different ways, collectively and individually. I'm optimistic about that. I've had some experience in Beverly, being the new guy, and the city council not necessarily in alignment with the mayor, wanting to get my ear. Almost in an attempt to bifurcate my positions from the mayor's. Can't have that. Not when you report to somebody. You have to be respectful of the person that you work for. And had to tell them, well, this is not the mayor's position. My role here is to advocate for that position. So I'm hearing what you have to say. I have one particular city councilor in mind, a terrific guy, but very strong opinion. Let me tell you more about the mayor. I don't need to hear about his position. I understand it. Well, give me a minute. Now it's a two-way street. I'm getting to talk more about our position, and he's advocating his, and it was helpful. Found a little bit more common ground than we had before we started, in most cases. It will be hard. You're positively right about that, but I don't think impossible. And I hope I find the right mix for you.
Just as a follow-up, you did mention that, resources are limited, obviously. How are you going to make the best of those resources so that you don't yourself get overwhelmed?
Yeah, I think by having a dialogue about it occasionally, not necessarily frequently, about here's what I have planned for my week. I would propose, if it's something you think is a good idea, an email each Monday morning. Here's what I have done in the last week. Here's what I plan to do this week. I'll be here, there, and everywhere. And please be mindful of that. And if you think that you need to make a change in that, let me know. If you have to come in, if you're heading out of town and you want to clean some things up, please come see me. I think that by being clear to you about what my time constraints are working for you, that you can see. And if you don't agree with those resource allocations, please tell me, and I'll make time. I think that the best thing we can do, Selectmen, is to have a dialogue and for me to be clear about what is available and for you all to be clear about what you need. And we will, I'm very optimistic, find the right balance. So it's an openness and it's an understanding one another.
I'm going to rephrase the question because I didn't ask it properly.
Maybe I didn't answer it properly.
I was thinking more along the lines of delegation to your supports and in the interest
Oh, yeah.
of
Okay.
leveraging your knowledge and yet getting more done.
All right, very good. That is a big challenge, delegation to subordinates. It is for every manager. There's hundreds of books written on it, and it's a challenge that I face all the time. I have found in my career that the most successful way to utilize the resources of your reports is to make sure that they can do what you're asking or need them to do. So it comes in professional development, all the time, ongoing. I'm imagining a staff that wants to know about the selectmen's meeting on Monday night and what is going on with that groundbreaking or that ribbon cutting. What's happening here and what's happening there. And if I can keep them abreast of what's happening, now they understand the flavor of the challenges that I'm facing working for you. If there are, now that we're by the perspective, they understand kind of the flavor and the culture of the time and the moment. I'm sure that they've got the tools and the training and resources, that's the best way to easily delegate. The delegation conundrum typically comes from, geez, I'd love to delegate it, but it's going to take me a whole lot more time to delegate it than to just do it myself. We hear it all the time. That comes from a lack of taking the time to provide the frame of reference to what the challenge is that I'm asking them to help me with, and then the tools and the resources with training to do it. That has been the most effective way. And then it pays off dividends all the time. They understand the difficulties that right now is budget season, and then later it will be the tax recapitulation, and then later, and there's a cyclicality that comes along with municipal government. And if they can understand, it will be my intention to make them see, kind of feel my pain. This is what we're doing and dealing with right now. Oh, I understand. Can I help you with X? And now the dividends start to pay back, that they really are able to stand in my shoes and understand. And then the delegation is most effective. And that's been the best strategy I've been able to employ.
Further follow-up? Hearing none. Michael? You're up.
So you mentioned that you've read our strategic plan, I believe, right?
Yes, I've read a lot of
Which is great.
documents. I'm not sure I could name each
Well,
one.
it's okay, I'm not going to test you, but really my question is about what's your philosophy regarding strategic planning, and if you can give us some examples of how you have used it in your positions, past and present.
All right. I have a couple of things to say about it. Having a plan, a strategic plan, we'll put a fancy name to it, it is vital because it's part of that dialogue. It's a way of bridging the understanding between all of the stakeholders in the community. If all the stakeholders in the community know that this is the balance, and many dimensions of balance in communities, but let's use residential and commercial, for example. This is the balance that we're striving for. And we have worked this out and come to a consensus that everybody knows which direction we're going in. That's vital. So planning, fundamentally, is critical to a community's success. I believe that. The successes that we had in Peabody came from planning and a real respect for the community development efforts. That's how you get Route 128 rerouted and 95 built. It can be that significant, and it wasn't that case. Route 128 became Jubilee Drive, and it's an industrial park now that adds to the tax base, and it was a wonderful opportunity to make a real improvement. That came from planning. That was just a mustard seed that was grown into a big bush from planning. So I have a real commitment to planning, strategic planning. I particularly enjoy, I really do, the input from all of the stakeholders. As testy as it can be sometimes, and as difficult as it can be, and contentious and maybe disagreeing, I think that all of the stakeholders bring all of these different dimensions to it. One that I particularly appreciated with you in our tours was the historic flavor. This is how it used to be, and this is how it is now. And I remember when. Those stories are very interesting to me and really crucial to understanding how the community used to be and how it was and now it is. And it helps me bridge that. Now, sometimes those occur without planning, and sometimes they do with. I think the better ones do with. So I'm committed to planning. I think that the second thing I wanted to say on that point was that we ought to be, and I would be very excited to help with the planning on a regional basis. I think that there are state resources and regional resources that can really be leveraged to help North Reading. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to subordinate your priorities, but it means that we can take advantage of resources from some of the data and some of the insights that some very sophisticated regional planners have. You know, I work with them now, and I'm always impressed with the scale of the things they're thinking about. And I'm certain that North Reading fits into that plan. We just have to have a seat at the table and to engage that level of planning regionally. And I would expect that we would be a seat at the table for state planning as well. There's no reason why the executive offices aren't hearing about what's important to North Reading and how we can fit in, or to know what they're planning for us to plan a response. So I think that there's local planning that comes from the community stakeholders. There's the regional aspect and the state aspect, and if we can get them all in alignment, I think we'll have a real good chance for a lot of success, and we can grow with what we've got already. I hope that answers your question with planning. I think it's vital.
Follow
Yeah.
up, anybody? Jeff, I believe you had one more question. Are
Yes,
you
thank you.
satisfied
Thank you.
at this point?
I do wish to ask the question, if that's okay with you. You know, during the process, sometimes some little things come up, and we kind of gives us a thought. So what I would like to know is, in the process, have you either identified any conflict of interest that you might have, or perceived, and that's an important word, perceived conflict of interest? And if so, what would it be, and how would you address that if you perceived that in the whole process from beginning to end?
Well, I would begin by saying that my interest in North Reading first came from a coworker, Joe Foti, who explained to me that there would be a process and that I consider it. When we worked together, we had talked about, you know, employment opportunities and whatnot, and I thought, no, thank you, but I appreciate you telling me what's going on in your community. You know, things are very good here at the MWRA. I'm doing well. The work is very interesting. But then I began, as I said earlier, to read more about North Reading. You know, living right next door and commuting to UMass Lowell, I would come through North Reading. It was like my backyard. You know, I was eating the kitties and getting my gas over here, and got to know. Got my coffee at, I don't know, three different iterations of Dunkin' Donuts and donut whatever, and all, and I understood the community. But when I began to read about the importance of stakeholders and the respect that the community had for all different opinions, and to solicit them in a sincere way, I was more intrigued by it, and was led to it, and indicated to Mr. Foti that I would likely be a candidate. And he explained to me then that it needed to be at an arm's length, that he was only one of 5, and that there would be a process, and explained to me that the process would have some validity, and I think that it has. I think it was a very good idea to hire the Collins Center. They have a wonderful reputation, and that process seemed to go very well. It was handled professionally. I understand, though, I'm not clear about just how many candidates you got, but my understanding is they got a number of qualified candidates. I'm flattered to be one of the finalists. But there it ended. And I began to hear more from the members of the selection committee about what they were looking for, and fellows like you and Mr. O'Leary about what was important to you, and have gone through the process. So while I don't think it's a conflict, I do know Joe Foti from, he was one of my, can I say it, one of my direct reports when I was the Deputy City Manager as DPW Director. Did a fabulous job at that, and really became friendly from that, having moved on. I see you once a month at the MWRA. Now he's my boss's boss's boss as one of the board members. I don't see it as a conflict. I'm satisfied, I think, having demonstrated my work ability to Mr. Foti. I don't need to convince him. I need to convince the 4 of you, and I hope I'm doing that, and the selection committee. That's where my real work is, and I don't think that presents a conflict. No, I don't. I'm interested in the stories, Mr. O'Leary, you have about Peabody. And you knew my old boss and how great and terrific he was, and for better or worse, we learned a lot from him, I think. And I don't think that presents a conflict. there will be people in municipal government that we meet occasionally in different roles. Sometimes we work with them here, and other times we work with them here. I know the Human Resource Director, who I worked with in Chelsea, is now in Peabody, and I see her occasionally when I visit my old friends and coworkers in Peabody City Hall. That's the nature of this business. You know, some people liken it to Major League Baseball, where professionals in municipal government move around a bit. I move around less, I think, than most, but still I've had to move. That's the nature of the business. I don't think it presents a conflict. It would be a conflict if there was some kind of quid pro quo. You know, but I don't need to convince, I hope I don't need to convince Mr. Fode of my abilities. I need to convince you, and that's been some work.
Good,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you for asking.
I'd like to follow up on that, if I could.
Follow up, Mike?
You know, in my previous life, I had a fairly sizable small business, 350 people, and I had a lot of senior executive positions that I had to fill. And 99% of those senior executive positions came from a recommendation from somebody I knew, somebody within my organization, or an organization I work with or I team with. And I found to get the best candidates that way. And I think by Mr. Fode making you aware of this opportunity, I first want to thank him, because you are a great candidate for this position.
Thank
And I
you.
don't perceive there be any conflict on that. I actually encourage, and I wish there was more people that had the relationships with North Reading that recommended good people like yourself. I know that there was over 20 roughly candidates that submitted, and we ended up only down to 2.
Okay.
Which is sad. I was a little disappointed, like every member at this board, but you know what? I think what Mr. Fode did, if he didn't have the fortitude to reach out to the quality people that he's worked with, you wouldn't be here right now, and we'd be missing out on this great opportunity. So I just want to say thank you for doing that. I think it was a great, the best interest of town. The last thing I want to tell you is that knowing Joe as long as I have, you still have to win him over.
All right.
He is not that kind of guy. And I mean that from knowing him, who he is, and being on the board with him in a short time. You don't automatically have this guy's vote, trust me.
I'm still trying.
I got a former selectman sits back there, I can tell you he voted completely against us many times.
Yeah.
So I know the person he is. He's got a
Actually,
lot of
wasn't against you,
integrity.
it was the right decision.
So, you still have
Something
your
I
work
have to
cut
put
out.
up with?
Mr. Chairman, may Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, of course.
All right, I consider, I've got 24 years and almost 25 years in municipal government, and I had what I consider to be 2 mentors. Then Mayor Mike Capuano, now Congressman Mike Capuano, and Jay Ash, City Manager in Chelsea. And I learned from them that as you work in different environments and with different people, you always keep kind of in the back of your head who the bright people are and who can do the job. I did mention Tom, but I'll also tell you that I mentioned it to I contacted at least 3 other people who I thought would be a good fit for the town. Unfortunately, they were, and nothing, but they were happy where they were. So it wasn't a case where I was, advocating for one single person. I was trying to get a pool of people who we could make an educated and a decision based on what's best for this town. So I just want to make sure I point that out.
So what's next? You now have the opportunity to question us as a group or individuals.
Oh, and don't be easy on us.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the layout of the municipal buildings? Town Hall wasn't always here, evidently. This was a school, I read.
This,
And if you could tell me more about that and what plans you have, and where I'll be hopefully taking over to help you implement that plan, for the Capitol buildings anyway.
a long time ago, I was a member of the school committee.
Okay.
And we were going from a school population that may have gotten as high as 3,600 kids with multiple sessions at the high school down to about 1,800.
Okay.
During my tenure, we closed 2 schools.
Hmm.
This school was originally rented to the SEAM Collaborative, and the town hall, which is currently the library, a historic building, and there's,
Yes, I've been there, right.
you've been there, right? That was town hall.
Okay.
Not enough space. The Board of Selectmen met upstairs, the Finance Committee met down in the basement. Before my time coming into town, the police station was in the basement with a cell.
Is that right? Yeah.
So the library was at the Putnam House.
Damon Tavern.
Damon Tavern, rather.
Right around the corner, isn't it?
Right
Right
across
across the street.
Right across the street.
Yep, you pointed it out.
The weight of the books was collapsing
Yes,
the building.
right.
There were, help me with the Porter, what's his first name?
Rufus Porter.
Rufus Porter
You know,
frescoes in the ceiling. You know, it's that historic a building.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, it was totally getting destroyed by the fact that it was a library. This building then became available, scene moved out, and musical chairs took place.
Okay.
The library was redone, and an elevator was added, and some additional space was added in the library. And the town hall moved in here, basically, not much has been done. A few walls have been moved. There's lots to be done. There's been some plans that were put together for all the municipal buildings a number of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
which included a proposal to build a new town hall in the backyard and take this down. There's been all kinds of proposals, all sitting there stagnant, waiting for a champion to move them forward, also looking for some money.
Sure.
Right now, the school project, which you've probably read about, is really, put a big burden on the taxpayers of North Reading. They voted 4-1 on the first round for the first round of financing, and then fell short by another $17 million, and went out again, and I believe that won by a ratio of a little over 2-1.
Yeah, I remember reading.
So it's really a supported project, and it's underway,
Yes.
and I don't think we're going to be doing much until we get further downstream with finishing that project and, absorbing a little bit of the capital strain on everybody's pocketbooks.
Understood.
We really have to be concerned about our elders, people who have been lived in town for a long time, getting up past my age, and, retirees struggling to stay in town because of, its growth, the kinds of homes that have been put in, the values of real estate. And unfortunately, the smaller homes in town have grown at a faster rate than the larger ones from a value point of view, because people are buying them up, adding, tearing them down,
Right.
things like that. So
Right.
we have some challenges in that area. But that's how we got to town hall here. There is a little money in the budget to do some fixing up, but not much. If we go back a few years, we redid the police fire, the public safety building near the library. A few years ago, we added to the police station. We kind of rebuilt it,
Right.
provided more
I
space.
saw that.
But then again, there's another spot that there's really not enough room. The fire department needs to be done over. There's not a room, really not enough room on that site to do that.
Yeah, I was there too. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have some challenges with respect to that. And, as you read in the strategic plan, what's really important to the community is to start to grow our commercial base. And
That was my
tied in
next
with that
question.
is water.
Yep.
You must know a lot about that, I
Right.
hope.
We didn't talk a lot about that. I'd be
Right.
interested to hear more about what you think about that.
And sewer.
Yes.
What I can say about water, we're moving forward with MWRA. We've gone through some of the permitting process.
Right.
We understand that they're interested in taking us on as a customer.
Mm-hmm.
They've got some infrastructure to do. We have some agreements to deal with the town of Reading. Facilities to pump that water. Currently, we draw a million gallons a day from Andover. We
Yeah.
have a municipal cross,
It's a municipal agreement.
we have a municipal agreement anyway with them to transfer water across to,
Yes, I was reading about that.
and, that's a strain because, one, they want too much money for the water, and two is that we have a limit. It's not enough. Our wells, the amount we can draw out of the ground is limited by DEP and all the various things associated with the Ipswich River watershed.
Yes.
So we have that issue. And on top of it all, our wells really need to be redone, but we invest several $1 million in that, or do we try to bring water in? Wastewater, we spent a fair amount of time studying to build a treatment plant in town, and Weston Sampson did a lot of the work and defined those districts, basically Route 28, Martins Pond, Concord Street in the center of town with the municipal buildings. They never quite came up with enough discharge area. We have some reserved area at the DPW garage and also part of the Berry property,
Uh-huh.
but it's still not enough. Change of DPW directors brought in some other ideas, and we've looked at shuttling the waste out of town. There's a pipe in Danvers,
Mm-hmm.
no capacity at the Salem plant.
Okay.
There's MWRA, where everything is on hold, I guess, while they deal with the problems going through Winchester and that whole line, at least that's what we've been told.
Okay.
And then we have Greater Lawrence, which seems to be the path that we're
That may
going to
be.
go through.
You're wheeling it through Andover.
Really.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I know I can help you with those issues. Drawing from the Ipswich River is going to be even more difficult, with the Sustainable Water Management Initiative, the SWIMI, where DEP is sort of recasting the regulations for the Water Management Act. And it'll be difficult to continue down that avenue or to expand it. And if the feelings that I got and understanding that I got from our initial time together in the selection committee was that some measure of commercial growth, improvement to the tax base was something that was desirable. And of course, you already know that water and sewer can be an impediment to that if you have limitations. So drawing from the Ipswich River is difficult now, and most experts are agreeing now, at least a lot of the experts at the MWRA are seeing that the state is going to come down and make it a little bit more difficult. But then there are initiatives that recognize that the interbasin transfer concept, where water should not be moving from this basin to this basin, needs to be tempered. There are economic realities that don't put undue environmental strains on the discharging basin, and that the interbasin transfer concept does make sense. And I think we can all agree that if nature put water here, maybe it should stay there. But if we're taking water and there's no harm to the fluvial fish components and to the groundwater characteristics, then where is the harm when there's so much benefit? And those dialogues are happening right now. And I think that it would behoove North Reading, and I hope to do this for you, is to be at the table when these decisions are being made and to be heard on these issues. Because I think it's important, at least you've described it as being something that's important for the economic longevity and vitality of the town. So I'm certain that I can help in those areas. Yeah, and I'm optimistic about some success.
Mr. O'Leary.
Just in relation to all that was said, as far as historically in the buildings, and
Yeah.
we are where we are. And but DPW garage needs to be addressed. Fire
Okay.
department needs to be addressed. Fire department's been advocating for a West Side station for years. There's a whole host of initiatives that have been discussed. Again, it comes down to economics and people
Mhm.
to pay for it. But from an economic growth standpoint, it is water and sewer.
Yeah.
Capacity in both, and the capacity to, but the people's willingness and ability to pay for it is really going to be the biggest impediment. We had to tackle the school. Priority-wise, that was the right thing to do.
Okay.
I just think we are several years away before we get public support for, it's going to take an override, to embrace these initiatives that need to take place if we're going to change the economic climate within the community and give some property tax relief to the residents. I mean,
Yeah.
we're about 10% commercial industrial and close to 90% residential, so it's very difficult. So, given that, we're planning ahead, because, as you said, this is going to be here long, it's going to be long before us, it'll be here long after we're gone. So we're doing the planning stages of it, but as far as the political likelihood of it occurring, in this decade, it's going to be tight. It's going to be very close if we're going to be able to do anything. So in light of that, we need to still move forward. We still have a lot of vacant storefronts. We're having some property that needs to be upgraded, and
Yeah.
people aren't investing in it. So, what can we do to to do that. Now, you have some, a little more urban experience in relation to maybe some grants, but I haven't seen too many grant programs for communities such as bedroom communities as far as, upgrading storefronts. and-
No, more for infrastructure and more for planning, more for long-term kinds of solutions. But you're right, it's been dry with respect to grants for urban renewals and storefronts and signage and frontage, and those kinds of grants have been tough. But administrations change and times change, and the climate of planning can change. If these are the issues that we're facing, and occupancy of storefronts can be a long-term problem. It's not just a short-term problem. You get in some quick tenancy. Storefront vacancy can be a long-term problem because it has an erosion effect in a community. You may be feeling that. I'm getting the sense that you're feeling that a little bit. We can turn that around and think of it as a long-term problem and convince the urban planners and the state planners and the executive offices that this is a real, not just short-term, not just beautification issue, but this is a long-term economic employment vitality of the community issue. We may be able to change some minds. It won't be with one meeting, admittedly, but I'm optimistic we can make some improvement there.
Any other questions? I don't know. For us?
Those are my two big
Were you
ones.
going to respond to,
Oh, I was going to follow up on the wastewater that he was talking about.
go ahead?
Okay, thank you. Do you see in your role securing grants for possibly our wastewater project?
I see my role as helping with that and doing the most I can with that. Yes, I think that to hold me to a standard where I would deliver maybe
No, I
imprudent.
don't mean that.
But yes, I do. I think that grants come from a coordinated effort to cooperate with the granting authorities. Let's use the Massachusetts Works Grant, the Mass Works Grant, for example. There are so many requirements with that grant. There has to be the master plan, there has to be strategic planning, you have to demonstrate that you've got data on demographics and data on economic activity. If we make part of our culture, and I would, and I hope that your planning question goes to this, I would make that professionalism part of my work here for you, is that we would be participating in that, so that when a grant is made available, well, of course we're ready for that, because we're employing the best practices that are recognized by the granting authorities as being the best practices, and then we're in alignment with that. So when the MAPC is offering opportunities to develop certain documents that are favorably viewed by state granting authorities, well, we want to attend that, and we want to go to that workshop and develop those documents and have them ready. So when Mass Works makes a subtle change to the scope of the grant that now includes signage grants or low-interest loans for signs, and we're not happy with some of the signs that are here and want to have something more aesthetically pleasing or in keeping with the community, we're ready. So yes, I do, but not because I'm hoping to bring dollars. What I'm hoping to do is to bring an administration that is ready to cooperate with the regional and state authorities that are going to be doing the granting, and to even be part of and sitting at the table when the grant scopes are being developed. Thankfully, the people at the different agencies, whether it's the Executive Office for Environment and Energy, for example, they're not putting together their granting programs in a vacuum. They're putting together granting programs because they think there's a need. Now, if the need doesn't address us here in North Reading, well, maybe it ought to have. And maybe we need to be at the table and make them aware of that, because we're not alone either. Right? The challenges, Mr. O'Leary, that you're describing, we're not alone in those. And if we can convince I'm going to describe them as the granting authorities, but I'm thinking of state agencies and the planners at the regional levels. If we can convince them that we're not alone, and that this is a priority for us, admittedly, but for others as well, I think we have a good chance to help them design a grant that favors us and a program that favors us. And because I'm hoping to put in these best practices in planning, that we'll be ready.
Some years ago, President Obama had the shovel
Shovel-ready.
program, right?
Yes.
And we were looking at our wastewater at that time, and apparently we were not prepared to, if it was even at all possible, to take advantage of that.
Okay.
But we were not prepared to do that at the time. And if I understand you correctly, what you're really saying is to be prepared so that when an opportunity presents itself, that we would be able to take advantage. I think that's what you're.
That is precisely what I'm saying. I can't be certain for the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act granting that we would have been ready. I don't know if it would have been practical.
Right.
I know that at the MWRA, we received over $30 million. That comes into my department, by the way. And we had the task of getting on the phone to our engineering staff and what projects do you have that you otherwise wouldn't be doing, and working it through. That's the big wind turbine that you see at the Schraff Center complex. That was from ARA funding. That's because we had that ready to go. Energy efficiency is something that the authority's been working on. I think energy efficiency would be something I'd be working on for you. It doesn't mean that we're going to be implementing, but we're ready, and we're aware, and we're a day away from being ready for that kind of funding. I think that I can make that kind of promise. Yeah.
Okay, at this point, Tom, we give you an opportunity to make a closing statement
All right.
and sell yourself to the board.
All right.
Which you've been doing all along here, so.
Once again, let me thank you for, first, the utmost professionalism throughout this entire process. Albeit it has been a couple of months, I think it was necessary, and I commend you for it. Having a process that has a lot of validity is very important, and it'll be very important for me to deliver the kind of service that I'm looking to do for you. To help you is going to be even more pointed by me standing on a solid platform, and that platform comes from the process that you've employed. So congratulations to you and thank you. It'll yield a better result, I'm certain. Let me say that the people in North Reading are just like everybody else. They're busy in their days. They're busy with their work. They're busy loving their families. They're busy dealing with the personal challenges that they may be facing. We all know what our busy days are like. And these busy people in North Reading are counting on us to protect them from crime, to protect them from fire, to make sure that the roads they travel on are safe, the buildings they occupy are safe, that we're recording births and deaths, occasionally votes, that we're doing it efficiently, that we're educating our children, our future, in a way that benefits everybody, the children in the community. We're providing some measure of support to our seniors, as a community ought to. All the while, in their busy days, we're not really thinking about that, are they? They're counting on us. In this unspoken way, they're counting on us to deliver these services and to deliver them efficiently. Sometimes there's a thank you. Sometimes it's just taken for granted, which means it's even a more responsibility that we have. And I want you to know that every day that I work for you, I will keep that in mind and work as hard as I can and as hard as I know how to live up to that great responsibility. And even more, because the responsibility really rests with you five as the elected officials. I'll be even more respectful of that because you're counting on me. And I'll work extra hard to make sure that you're proud and confident in the decision you make to hire me as your next town administrator. And I'll close with that and say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. And then you can take that water with you for the ride home. It's free charge, too.
You know we don't drink bottled water at this.
I know. Well, I
You
filled
respect
it.
that, we'll leave
I went
it.
over to Reading and filled that and just put the cap on.
Well, then I'll have it. Thank you for the offer. I'll leave it to the bank first.
We're going to start with just a quick introduction. I think you've met everybody, but we'll do it one more time. Mr. O'Leary?
Michael, welcome. Steve O'Leary, I've been on the board off and on for the most part since 1988. And again, I want to thank you for throwing your hat in the ring and willing to subject yourself to this this process, and I look forward to hearing the answers to your questions tonight. Thank you.
Michael, welcome. Jeff Ewell, newly elected selectman here in North Reading. Had a term 2009 to 12, and I'm happy to be back, and I look forward to your questions tonight, and thank you for coming forward.
Bob Messeri, I'm currently the board chair now, and just beginning my 11th year on the board.
Michael Prisco, has been on the board 4 years now. I just want to thank you for your patience through this process. I know it's your third time with us, so thank you for making the sacrifice from your family and your time from work to be here. It does mean a lot to us, and We wish you best of luck tonight.
And Mike, Joe Fode, 2 years on the Board of Selectmen, so that makes me the new guy. Appreciate you coming forward. I know it's been kind of a longer process than we had anticipated, but we're here now, and we're excited to hear your responses to our questions, as you did a great job in the screening committee, so I wish you luck.
Thank you, Joe.
And Michael, the format we're going to use is very similar to what we did with the steering committee. We have a number of questions. Individuals will ask the questions. There'll be follow-ups, and you'll have an opportunity at the end to ask questions and to make a closing statement. So to start, please tell us about yourself and why you think you would be the best choice for North Reading's new town administrator.
Certainly. Again, Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you. As was previously stated, my name is Michael Gilberto. A little bit about myself. I come to the board with 12 years of experience in state and local government here in Massachusetts. Currently, as has been stated, I'm the town administrator in the town of Tingsboro. Tingsboro has a similar form of government to North Reading, 5-member board of selectmen, open town meeting. It's essentially a suburb of the city of Lowell, approximately 12,000 people. 11,200 people. I've been a town administrator there since 2010, and prior to that, I was employed by the city of Worcester. My last role was director of operations for the city manager in the city of Worcester. I held a number of roles prior to that, and then prior to that, I was legislative aide to State Representative Ted Spiliotis from Danvers. I'm a graduate of Boston College with a degree in political science and theology and a minor in faith, peace, and justice studies, which sometimes gets people's attention. And I have a master's degree in public administration from Suffolk University. I have applied for the position of town administrator in North Reading because I think that my experience, my qualifications match up well with my understanding of where the town and the board are and are looking to go. I've read through the publication from the Collins Center. Examined it closely and took it to heart. Living in the town, I am aware of some of the occurrences over the past year and some of the public discussion that the board has had. And I think that my experience, most significantly my recent experience in Tingsboro, working in town government, would fit North Reading well and fit the board well. To be specific, I think that if you speak with folks, whether they be references or selectmen or employees in Tingsboro, I think you'll find that I have an even tempered style that is demanding of employees, but in a positive way. That is collaborative in working with the Board of Selectmen, both as a whole and in establishing relationships with the individual members, and that ultimately every decision that I made, every recommendation I have made is in the interest of the town. In light of that experience, it prompted me to seriously consider applying for this position. I've not widely been searching for employment elsewhere from Tingsboro. I've been otherwise very happy in Tingsboro, and the community has been very welcoming. But as I stated during the process, earlier in the process, and during our meeting 2 weeks ago, the opportunity to work a job that is 24/7, as we all know, here in the town where my wife and I will raise our 2 boys, is one that I am extremely interested in. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow-up, anybody? How long have you lived in town?
Since 2011.
Joe?
Michael, in order of importance, what steps will you take to assure your transition into our community is successful?
Could you repeat the first part, Mr. Fode?
Yeah, sorry. In order of importance, what steps will you take to assure your transition into our community is successful?
Having gone through the transition into another community in 2010, I can tell you that reading is often really the best way to get a head start, because it can be done at any hour of the day or night at the same time you're holding employment elsewhere. And by that I mean becoming familiar with the ongoings of the board more recently, going through meeting minutes, reviewing collective bargaining agreements if they're made available for review, reviewing annual town reports, annual town meeting, special town meeting minutes. I really think that's where you get the base of some of the discussions that have been taking place. I think that I'm familiar with, on a broader level, at least the discussions that have happened in the community from a media standpoint, as I do, again, live in town and have followed from a distance, from the sidelines, if you will, the issues facing the community. But I think really that's often the first step, and it kind of runs, it goes from the day, from whatever point an appointment is made all the way and into transition and into the role starting. It continues, really. But that's really the first thing that jumps out at me. And the second thing is establishing relationships. Establishing relationships with the Board of Selectmen. Again, as I referenced earlier, it's probably not going to be a whole lot of opportunity for either candidate to establish those relationships with the board as a whole prior to starting, but establishing relationships with the individual members prior to starting, I think, is an important way to establish a good foundation for a positive working relationship for the long term. So I would, secondly, again, engage in those conversations with board members informally, likely off hours if the board members are so willing, to come up to speed as to the matters that are going on here in town. And then thirdly, to the point that it's permissible and the point that it's feasible interaction with the current staff here in the town hall, whether it be with the current town administrator for a transition meeting, whether it be with other key staff in the town hall. That would be the third thing that I would identify to proceed with, to come up to speed again to the items ongoing here in North Reading.
Fortunately, most of our interactions may have to be in off hours, as you know, because we all do something else, but thank you for, most of us, I said, not you.
Follow-up, anybody?
Just
Mr.
in
O'Leary.
relation to your, you took over in Tingsboro, what type of experiences did you have in relation to the transition? When you first arrived, you know, what did you find, and how did you?
Now it's on.
Okay. Just again, in relation to Tingsboro, when you first took over there, 2010? 2010. Obviously, came into a situation, whatever it was, and you know, how did you handle the transitional period there? I mean, you inherited the staff, you inherited the board, which is what the situation will be here.
Sure.
So, I mean, you articulated what your level of importance are, but really, what were the true experiences in relation to the transition?
Well, I appreciate the question, and I have the luxury of hindsight now to be able to respond to the question, having gone through it once, but I think it could be to your advantage in the future. But the experience was that there was an interim town administrator who was in town. I was offered the ability to meet informally with that interim town administrator a couple of times. The town, through the interim town administrator, established consecutive meetings with staff where I was able to come and essentially participate in a department head meeting prior to starting my role as town administrator. And finally, there are pluses and minuses to this approach, but there was actually a 1-week overlap that was in place where the last week of the interim town administrator's role was actually my first official week as a town administrator. We kind of switched roles, and he functioned as an assistant town administrator for that first week. That was what was afforded. I thought that it worked well. As I've looked back in hindsight and kind of analyzed it, I would make the adjustments that I described in the earlier part for myself in a future opportunity.
You met with the interim TA?
Yes, in Tingsboro, yes.
How long was the interim TA there?
He began on January 1st, and his last day would have been April 9th.
Okay, so he was there about 4 months?
Yes.
3 or 4 months, okay. Given what you did, is there anything that you wouldn't do
In transition?
in the transition?
It's difficult to have two people in the building carrying the title of town administrator. I think that it was very well intended. I think that, at the time appreciated by myself, but I do think that it can create some confusion. Fortunately, we didn't have any specific issues, but I could easily see if there was a really marked difference in style that it could be problematic, even for only a short time.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Yule.
Mr. Yule. Mr. Yule. By your answer, would you prefer to start without any assistance from in our case, the current TA? You just would you prefer to hit the road running, so to speak?
Are you asking the question in the sense of a possible overlap that I described? Or?
Yes, yes.
I would say that we all would need to be aware of what the roles are. And again, I think as long as it is clear that one person is holding the position of town administrator, it can be workable.
Right.
But that needs to be clearly set forth in the very beginning as to what the roles are.
Right, right. Well, if you start on the first, then you'd be the man in charge, so. So, thank you.
Sure.
Further follow-up, Michael.
Through the transition you had in your current position, in the very upfront first few months, did you make any significant changes or any changes at all? And when do you, and if not, when did you feel comfortable to start implementing some changes?
I would say no. In the very immediate beginning, the first 3 or 4 months even, thinking back through my memory, I cannot identify any major areas where there was changes that I implemented. It was probably more around the 6-month mark where I had some conversation with the board about making changes, because I think that we know that local government is cyclical in its nature. So as much of a sort of cycle you can get running, you kind of have the entire perspective. I mean, that's not to say that there may not have been things that I saw that I felt needed to be addressed, but none of them rose to the kind of mission critical level that they needed to be addressed right away. If there were an item that were to be identified that was a major problem, it would need to be dealt with right away.
Thank you.
Further follow-up on that question? Mr. O'Leary?
Michael, could you please tell us about your leadership skills and how you have applied them in budget discussions, contract negotiations, personnel issues, and problem solving?
Well, I think that I really place a premium on effective communication. And by that I mean, I think that most people who are in a discussion like that in a role of town administrator, whether it be budget, collective bargaining, or otherwise, are going to know the numbers, they're going to know the facts, they're going to know the data that's driving whatever position might need to be taken. But I think where sometimes it's easy to get caught up is when the information is just presented as something that the individual wants to do, rather than the data being provided to show why it needs to be done. And when it comes to, for example, a budget, meeting with department heads in terms of what the recommendation is going to be for the budget, you can't just say no. You have to explain why the answer is no. You have to at least identify where there may be alternatives. You need to talk through with the department head what the impact is of not being able to fund something, for example. Conversely, if it's a situation where the town administrator believes that there is an item that needs focus and needs funding, getting the department head to agree with that, if it is something that can be agreeable. That's all done through effective communication. I really think you need to be upfront with the data, with the concern, and really talk through the issue that's on the table. You run at a really fast pace. I think any town administrator will say that, and so it can be tempting to simply move on without talking through an item because there's an endless list of things. But I think that ultimately communication, preservation of a relationship is what allows everyone to continue working together even when a bad decision, or a difficult decision has to be made that one side takes to be a negative outcome. Similarly with collective bargaining, very transparent discussion in terms of the town's standing, in terms of the town's long-term financial standing. I think that if you were to speak with bargaining units in Tingsboro, they would say I've been nothing but upfront in the conversations with them. When I've had to decline on something, say no to something, whether it be during the day-to-day operations, for example, because of a grievance or otherwise, it's always thoroughly explained so that there's a full understanding of why. But I really think that communication is the hallmark to be able to be effective.
As far as, Mr. Chairman, just in relation to some personnel issues that you've had to deal with?
Sure. I mean, personnel issues by their nature are personal to the employee that may be involved, and that can make it difficult. It becomes all the data in the world, all the evidence in the world may not be enough to convince somebody. That's when the town administrator has to make difficult decisions and say that I understand, I've heard what you said, but the reality is the policy is this, the reality is the law says this, whatever the grievance might be that's identified the issue. The town administrator is in a position that he has to make that difficult decision, and I can tell you I have been in a position where I've had to make either difficult decisions or difficult recommendations, and but have continued to preserve working relationships after the fact.
Tell me, describe some non-labor related problem that you had to occur and how you turned it into a positive outcome.
Going through the budget process this year for fiscal year 2015, we knew, myself, the finance coordinator, knew that there were areas where there needed to be some attention paid to the way certain revenues were being treated to make sure that they were properly accounted for to address what those revenues are supposed to pay for. So the example would be water and sewer enterprise, for example, something like that, that were not being properly accounted for and were essentially being directed away from their true source. Through open, candid conversation with officials in the town hall and the superintendent of schools and the business manager, we're able to successfully rectify that for this year and moving forward in a way that is, I think, more transparent in the budget process and was advantageous for the integrity of the budget process. I think that was a positive outcome. I think that everyone, because of the clear communication that occurred, that there wasn't a disagreement with regard to it.
Michael?
In regards to leadership skills, I know it's obvious that you know how important it is to continue to have a high employee morale, to emphasize professionalism and so forth. Have you instituted any employee recognition programs or any kind of a recognition system in your previous opportunities and your current opportunity that you're in now?
Sure. That can be a challenge, and one of the concerns I've always had is if you start a program, the ability to sustain it. And I've seen in some work environments where there's a big rollout for an employee morale boosting program, and then in 6 months or so, it's forgotten, hasn't been implemented. So I've always been cautious about that. I really believe that it's, again, through the relationships, through the individual recognition with people, to jump right on it. When someone's done a good job, you approach them and say, hey, you did a really good job. When someone's made a mistake and they might be down and out, to go back to confront the individual, but then to make sure they're not totally down and out and that they know that you get back on the horse and keep moving. One thing I will point to is in Tingsboro, we did initiate, and I was charged with executing basically a frontline staff evaluation program, and it was the first time that it had been done in a number of years. And we essentially made it a performance merit-related program that we went through. We were employees, frontline employees who deal with the taxpayer, with customers in the town hall, day in and day out, who were evaluated using a mutually agreeable evaluation tool. and employees were then rewarded based on the outcome of those evaluations. And I think that there were some positives and some negatives to it, but the setup that we had forced the evaluation to occur, and I think overall it was a good thing for the community.
That's great, thank you.
Just what was the reward?
It
Monetary?
was monetary, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Was it a bonus type situation or?
It was a
merit
bonus,
increase?
yes, and it was instituted through basically a bonus payment that was made to employees. Again, there are pluses and minuses to it, and I'd be glad to discuss them in another setting at some point in time if you were so interested.
Further follow-up on that question? Jeff? Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
Just in relation to, well, two things. One is support staff, what are your expectations and what have you experienced in relation to direct support staff?
Mhm.
And then additionally, experience in working with school departments.
Sure. With regard to support staff, when I took the office, with the exception of the first week that I referenced previously, there is a full-time administrative assistant in the office. It's an administrative assistant to the Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator, and day-to-day oversight, of course, coming from the Town Administrator, but at times, as needed, Selectmen have direct access to the staff as well. And I can tell you that the pace was fast, and it was a lot, and it worked at the time that during the time I was coming up to speed, because so much of the involvement is in the day-to-day ongoings in the town hall and within town government. But I think that the selectmen and I recognized that if we were going to really tap into the potential major projects, et cetera, that we would we really needed to look for additional staff, and we had a candid discussion about the merits of that, and ultimately establish a position of assistant town administrator, which we have in Tingsboro, and that allowed us to bring on another full-time person, management level person to assist with projects, and with day-to-day issues in the absence of the town administrator and the rare occasions that they come up. I can tell you I've worked in both settings. I fully understand that for most town administrators, you're doing the balance of the day-to-day and advancing the projects that need to be advanced, that really have nowhere else to go just because they need stewardship, and there may not be anybody else with the capacity to do it. I will say, though, that can be mitigated effectively by a town administrator if, again, the effort is put into establish as much of a relationship and a workflow between the board and the employees in the town hall as well. If you can show where employees may have a stakeholder in a particular project, it's certainly capable to share in the responsibilities within the with the workload with staff existing in the building. There's not going to be a ton of opportunity to do that, but there are certain areas where you know that there may be some capacity because another project has concluded, and you can rely on existing staff without having to expand. My understanding is there's two positions in the office here. I met both of the employees during the walkthrough. Is that correct? And I think that is sufficient and appropriate for a community of this size, at least at this time.
And then work with the school department?
Working with the school department, I have a very good relationship with the superintendent of schools, and the finance coordinator has a very good relationship with the business director. We have worked really hard, the superintendent and I, to preserve a working relationship. And we've been fortunate. There has not been much disagreement between the elected boards that we each work for, but I think part of that is because we have remained in regular communication. And it's not for, it's only because of the effort that's been put in, as the superintendent has been very engaged in paying attention to the goings-on in town government, and I have been very engaged in terms of what the needs are in the school department when those needs arise. And I would classify it as a very good working relationship, and one that I think regular communication, again, is a big part of it. It started as regular meetings, just in terms of things that were going on, and it kind of morphed into just, an ongoing dialogue, really, where when an issue comes up, it gets jumped on right away.
Follow up? No? Okay. Michael?
you mean Jeff, right?
I'm
I
sorry,
think-
Jeff, I'm getting ahead of myself
You
here.
called me before.
No, it was
Back on,
Steve
right.
that asked for a follow-up.
Excuse me. We have expectations of you to do a job and do it well. We have that of all of our employees in town. But the question now comes, what do you need from us to help you perform your tasks as efficiently and effectively as you possibly can?
It's a great question. I appreciate that. I think that a willingness to be communicated with and to communicate that, again, it's probably the first thing I would identify so that you know, to the extent possible, what I'm working on and where the demands are for the time of the town administrator in the town hall, and that I'm conveying it to you properly. I think so understanding is probably the first thing, and I've been fortunate. Selectmen in Tingsboro have very much been that way. But I think it's because I've established relationships with them and on an individual basis. Support. There'll be times the town administrator needs to make a difficult decision, and I know that it can have ramifications, but if I've done my job to keep you informed of a difficult decision and the reasons why, it should make it easy for you to support me. But that's something that I would also request from the board. And
If I may help you along with that, do you have any examples of circumstances that have helped you perform your tasks at Tingboro?
in terms of...
In relation to your interaction with the board, you come across a
Sure.
situation.
I think that we had, much as North Reading experienced, we had a very bad storm in October of 2011, it must have been. A lot of damage done. I know we had at one point more than 3/4 of the town without power. And selectmen were receiving phone calls, those who had access to phone service on their cell phone or otherwise. And I think I did my part to apprise them on twice a day as to what was going on. And they, I think I can only imagine, I've never discussed it with them, it must have taken a lot of discipline not to contact me on an ongoing basis, because I'm sure they were getting a lot of calls. But I thought it worked very productively. I think the board was very pleased with the incident response that that I coordinated at that time, and it was recognized by the board after the fact as well. So again, it's a two-way street. For myself, in terms of expecting understanding, I have to offer the same. But I think that's a really good example, because as we all know, when the power goes out, people are upset, and I was given the space to be able to deal with the issues, be in the field, assist the chiefs with regard to their work, provide regular media updates, and I think it was really positive.
Thank you.
Michael, outside of the standard board meeting, how, what methods did you use to keep the board informed of specific issues, items that might have occurred in the community over the course of between meetings?
I think that this is one where you need to know what the board expects, but I think that if you were to ask the selectmen in Tingsboro, that I have been very communicative with them, and that I probably better than 90% of the time find the right method to communicate it. So if it's not going to have a chance to, if it's a really sensitive matter, as you can imagine, 5 phone calls. I mean, that's what takes place if it's a really sensitive issue that needs to be talked through. If it's something that needs to show up in some way other than an email, just a statement of a fact that someone needs to know. If it's I don't know what an example would be. Maybe a power outage might be an example of it. Text message I find works as well, and it's always done directly from myself to the selectmen. A lot of email done in a way so as not to create an opportunity for deliberation or anything like that pursuant to the open meeting law, but providing facts, attachments, files, etc. I do it regularly, probably a few times, depending on the day, a few times a day, but I do it regularly. And I think that you need to know you are in the community. You will receive the phone calls, you will see the issues, and you should be prepared. So depending on the matter, that's how I've operated.
Did you have a fixed schedule for meeting with the board chair or board selectmen?
We speak daily. With the chair, it's something where we have a very open line of communication. It's been a very open conversation where we're back and forth all the time. I think that there certainly is merit, depending on the board's expectations, to setting more of a recurring type of schedule. That's also something that could be looked at, but it just depends, because you all have other obligations outside of your responsibilities as selectmen, so it depends on what fits your schedule, and my philosophy has been that it's really up to the town administrator to be flexible to accommodate that, out of respect to the other obligations that you all have.
Further follow-up, Mr. O'Leary?
You're not always going to, and I'm sure you haven't experienced unanimity whether it be on issues or personnel matters or whatever it is in relation to a board.
Mm-hmm.
And again, board members come and go. The
Mhm.
position is still here, and it's generally the anchor. In the way that our charter is set up, it's a strong town administrative form of government. So in relation to trying to get some direction from the board, how do you handle that when there's diversity of opinion?
You have to, in my experience, have your ear to the ground, if you will, through that open, the open dialogue with the individual members to know where there may be an issue. A smart administrator will know that, hey, there isn't consensus on this, and if that's the case, and then it needs to be a determination made, or inclusion of the board as a whole, then the matter may need to be considered by the board as a whole in order to establish a direction. I mean, that's where I think the board as a whole, functioning as a group of 5 individuals with the majority, or depending upon whatever the requirement is, determining the direction we're going to go in. I think a good town administrator will recognize that. I can tell you there were, my experience in the city of Worcester, working for the city manager and directly with the city council, I think that the approach that was taken, one that he took and that I took to heart, was even if an instance would come up that the authority was there for the city manager to do something, if there wasn't consensus, it somehow needed to be discussed on the council floor, and so that everyone could at least put in their input and move forward. Does that answer your question, Mr. O'Leary?
Yeah, to a certain degree, I guess,
I'd be glad to elaborate if you
yeah, no, it's just, sometimes members of the board have different views as to what their role is too. And as
Mhm.
far as utilizing the resources of the position, the town administrator's position, how do you balance fairness in relation to equal members of the board members and someone who's going to try and monopolize or dominate your time constraints? How have you had that experience where you've had to balance that?
When an issue comes up where I'm concerned that the board as a whole may not be being served in its best interest as a whole, I think that's where the communication with the chairman is really important. Speaking with the chair and identifying this as an issue. I can tell you my experience tells me that it ebbs and it flows. It may get to a close, it's never a breaking point, but close to it, where there's a concern and it gets addressed, and generally it evens out. But I think that, again, if I'm being effective and if I'm being aware of the entire environment going on in terms of everything going on in the town hall, the work of the Board of Selectmen, the wishes perhaps of individual members, that whole mix, I'll identify it early on and we'll address it. And the board as a whole may need to address it, the chairman may need to address it. It just depends on what the nature of the situation is. But I can tell you I have been through it, and I feel that it has been able to be managed through that approach.
Jeff?
Yes, I hope I'm not repeating Steve's question, but just for maybe clarity purposes. We have diversity on the board, we have all different opinions, we all have ideas. I always look at Board of Selectmen as idea men, and then you tell us, no, it's either a good idea or not such a good idea, okay? But how do you handle different members of the board coming into you with ideas and suggestions, when you realize that possibly what they're asking for maybe should be handled by the chairman or through the chairman, how do you address or handle that kind of situation? And you can use me as an example, as if I came in with some bizarre idea or something like that.
Could I ask, in the example that you've given, what would you be, could you give a specific example, I guess, that might help me in answering the question, a specific type of request?
If I wanted something that I'm asking you to do something that nobody in the board has asked you to do, okay, and I'm trying to get you to maybe support my idea or what have you, if I did something like that, and maybe you've had conversations with the chairman, and it seems to be, you're sensing there's a tug here, there's a tug of war here, for lack of a better description. How do you handle it? Because we are diverse, and we are creative, and we have ideas, and all well-meaning to boot, okay? So you have to balance us. And I guess that's really the question. How do you balance us in situations like that? Are you willing to say, it's a good idea, I'd have to run it by the chairman, or what have you?
Well, I can tell you that there are varying levels of those items that come up. There may be an example of something that the board has already taken a policy position on, or there's already been predetermined this issue is going to happen, and there's some feedback from an individual member on a nuance of the issue. In that estimation, if I didn't see that it was inconsistent with what the board as a whole or the chair was looking to do, I probably would be comfortable with proceeding. But I think the example you're giving is one where that hasn't happened, where it's something that is new or has not been previously discussed. And I think that in order to manage the resources available to the board, the best answer is to, at a minimum, have consultation with the chair, but ultimately, for perhaps the board as a whole to take up the matter. Again, there are varying levels of those types of ideas that come up. So they may be emergent issues that need to be addressed and just simply can't wait. In that case, then the town administrator probably has to use his discretion to keep the chair informed and act. But I think what you're talking about is something that's new, something that might be novel, that, hey, we should look at doing this.
Well, it could be anything as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
It really could, that was just one example that I gave you, but it could be anything,
Yeah.
because, again, as I said, we're all creative and we all have great ideas. And you serve all five of us, but for effectiveness and efficiency, many times you'd work more through the chairman. So there can be boards, I don't know about Tingsboro, but historically there are boards that do run amok, and I'd like to know how you handle that type of situation.
If it were to be an instance where it was happening with multiple members, it may need to be that there's a work session with the board to, I guess, revisit priorities, and if we've all done our work coming up to speed with whoever the town administrator is, there will have been some establishing of priorities at some point after that person takes office. But again, I think that the decision about whether something does or does not get paid attention to, that's a board level decision, needs to be vetted with the board. And I think that a good town administrator, in my opinion, will recognize that. Will recognize that there's an impact on again, the resources that are available, not only in the selectman and town administrator's office, but in the rest of the town hall, if it may be a research-related item. But again, it's a balance in terms of what is the other competing workload. And I mean, if it's as simple as an information request that can be easily assembled, well, that's a little different. I mean, it's probably public information anyway, and if it can be responded to easily, then so be it. But again, it comes down to how much of that is happening. And again, I do believe that that needs to be, town administrator needs to identify it as early as possible, consult with the chair, and perhaps address it with the board.
Follow up, Michael?
In regards to what you expect from us, are there any professional organizations that you would encourage us to participate in that could actually help us be a little more educated on the everyday life of being a town administrator? Or are there professional organizations that will allow us to help assist in trying to find regional solutions and things like that? Are there anything that right now you have a current board that they participate in annually or semi-annually?
I can't point to one that the board is on an ongoing basis participating in, but I can tell you that new selectmen generally attend the MMA's Selectmen's Association, New Selectmen's Orientation. I think that's a helpful one. But in terms of what I think you're asking about, which is in terms of the selectmen's relationship with the town administrator, more from the town administrator standpoint, the MMMA has a very good group within it, the Mass Municipal Management Association, that has been helpful to other communities. Oftentimes, the discussion takes place within the realm of changing the form of government, but I think that they have a lot of value to add, and I would suspect they'd be willing to participate in the type of discussion you've identified. Perhaps even a simple work session for one particular board in one particular community.
Because I think it's important, I know you invest some time in participating in some professional organizations in your career, and I think it's important that we try to participate in some as well, MMA obviously being one off the top of my head. So I wasn't sure if there were any additional ones.
The Municipal Managers Association within the MMA. I'm also a member of the ICMA. Because it is such a large organization, it's a little more difficult to have direct person-to-person relationships within that, but that it would be another resource that would be available to the board, potentially, for assistance.
Okay. Thank you.
You're up, Michael.
I know you went through the documentation that was provided to you, and one of them was the strategic plan, and hopefully you had an opportunity to look it over. I was just looking from you what your philosophy is on strategic planning and where you have used it in your current position and maybe in a past position.
I find strategic planning is planning is key, first of all. Let me preface it with that. But I think that the value in the strategic planning and a master planning effort for a town is to really ensure that a diverse group of stakeholders is included. And that can make an oversight committee a bit large and perhaps a little unwieldy in some people's opinion, but if you take that approach and then perhaps establish an executive committee of some sort, you start to manage a structure so that you have a plan that's as inclusive as possible. And I say that speaking to with firsthand knowledge. The town in Tingsboro, prior to my arrival, almost immediately prior, had established a town center master plan that had called for some certain investments to take place in the town center. And there was a very active group in town that felt they had not been included. And I think to this day we're really have recognized that we're going in a different direction. And I think a good foundation, a good base, is what's key to the whole product, that you really have included the right people or the right representatives of the right groups of stakeholders. Otherwise, you end up in a situation where you may have people throwing stones at what is otherwise a good plan.
Follow up, anybody? Steve?
Just in relation to strategic planning, and Michael touched on it too, as far as regional efforts. Have you been involved in any regional efforts, whether it be share resources, just communicate, look at a larger scale development?
I think that I've seen it, the good and the bad of regionalization. We were, at the time I started in Tingsboro had essentially a regional animal control officer that was employed by another community, and it was one of the first pieces of feedback I received, that the feeling was that the service was just dreadful. And it was for a variety of reasons that were outside of the town's control and perhaps outside of the control of the other town as well. And so we looked and said, you know what, just isn't working for the town. We need to look in a different direction. We ultimately went with our own animal control officer, an appointed by contract animal control officer. That's an example where it maybe didn't work. An example I would say of some success that we've seen is Tingsboro has been an active participant in a 4-town group negotiating with solid waste haulers to get the most advantageous rate possible. And I think that it ultimately, for reasons outside of our control, became a 3-town group at the end. But we really were able to obtain a very advantageous proposal for solid waste services in Tingsboro by sticking with 2 other communities. And to the point that there were things that I don't know we were even requesting that were offered and brought into the discussion by the vendor that I think I know 2 of the communities have taken advantage of, and I suspect a 3rd will look at as well. And that was a transition to automated recycling. So I would say that's a tremendous example of a success story.
Do you meet on a regular basis or periodically with other, again, as you say, it's a kind of a
Mhm.
suburb of Lowell, but other
Yeah,
communities in relation to the Merrimack Valley to,
I do. I think I have very good relationships with the other town managers around the city of Lowell. City of Lowell, as you know, has gone through you may know, has gone through some transition in leadership, but through our Regional Planning Council, NEMCOG, they really have provided a good forum for us to maintain regular ongoing discussions. And I think it's allowed us all to be tuned into what's going on in the other communities. Sometimes there are opportunities for regionalization that could be advantageous. I can tell you, there have been times when you look at it and you say, you know what, in addition to perhaps a loss and a drop-off in service, there may be a cost associated with it that otherwise the town wouldn't have to pay. So I remain pretty regularly engaged in dialogue with the town managers from the area around the city of Lowell. And I would expect it would be the same here in this area with the abutting communities.
Michael?
You know, we have invested quite a bit in our strategic plan.
Mhm.
I think it's been a valuable investment for us in time and energy especially. But one of I think the challenges I see with the strategic planning is communicating that to the working staff. I mean,
Mhm.
they're up here every day working so hard, and we're up here doing all the planning. But sometimes I believe that there's a break in sharing the strategic plan throughout the workforce. You know, you talked about you only have a center master plan is all you create, but you don't have a strategic plan in Kingsborough. And
We have a master plan, not a strategic plan.
so how do you communicate? Because obviously that's created, I would say, at a top level, at your level, and with your board level. So how do you communicate that with your staff?
Well, candidly, because of some of the issues I identified earlier in the presentation, the discussion that we've begun is we need to make revisions to the plan. The plan is just not reflective of where we're at in some areas today, and it's just time for it to be updated. I think if I were participating in that process and shepherding that process through, again, in addition to the external stakeholders that I described earlier that you need to include from within the community, you need to almost offer a bit of a work session for employees to understand what their role is in it. One of the things I know can be frustrating for an employee is the natural event that occurs. There's in the example of this board of, say, a Monday night meeting, something gets brought up, and the employee may or may not know anything about it. And that, of course, brings with it a dynamic of, I didn't know anything about this. And it may be that the town administrator didn't know it was going to come up either, or maybe that he or she did. But through, again, maintaining relationships, dialogue, regular meetings, if that's the appropriate forum, depending upon what's going on, it's the administrator's job to keep the staff informed as best as possible. I know it can be frustrating for employees because sometimes they may hear something slips through, but if overall the communication is happening from the town administrator, they become the anomaly and not the regular occurrence. And I think that's how you start to connect what's going on at the highest strategic level with what's going on day to day.
And I just have one more follow-up on that, if it's possible. Do you have the time?
Plenty of time.
Okay. Do you believe in goal setting? You have a strategic plan, and obviously you have to set some goals throughout each department that has to obviously feed into achieving those objectives that you created through the strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe in that, and do you implement that?
Goal setting is something, I can say I believe in it, but the implementation of it is something that needs to be done carefully. It's easy for the management to come up with a spreadsheet with a list of goals and a list of people associated with the goals and try to get to it. But again, if the town administrator isn't keeping himself informed as to the progress on those goals on a regular basis, or if he or she isn't I guess, interacting with the employees and towards those goals, what I see is it oftentimes just becomes a spreadsheet. I guess that what my answer would be, a lot of times I see when you try to establish goals, it starts to become a list of things to do. And I think it's important to really try to keep arm's length away from whatever is there and to say, these are items that have a direct relationship with the highest level strategic vision that we're looking to go after. Because, again, the temptation becomes there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done, and when is it going to get done? And it needs to be done yesterday. But you need to have the discipline to step back and say, how does this, it needs, the items in there need to be a step above the list of things to do, but, and tie in directly to the strategic vision. And again, if you build in people from the beginning, you tend to have more success than you do if it becomes forced upon them at the end.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. O'Leary?
Just in relation to your management style and your current position, how are you at delegating responsibility?
I can tell you that I consider, to be candid with you, I think I've become better and better at it. It's easy to, I indicated earlier, I think most town administrators, town managers burn hot. They want to get things done. They want to get things done as quickly as possible, and they may know that it can be done by them in a shorter amount of time than perhaps someone else can do it. But the question becomes, is that the most efficient use of the town administrator or town manager's time? And I think that organizationally, I've made some changes within Town Hall with the support of the Board of Selectmen so that there's a better alignment of places to which projects might be able to be delegated, and I think that we're seeing a lot of success. It has freed myself up. For example, as you probably saw, we had a $2.5 million construction project going on in the old Town Hall. I had to do all the construction administration on the project, and I was able to do that because there was somewhere to delegate to. It took time to be able to establish that, but I think that it's a bit of trust on the part of the town administrator, and it's a bit of understanding on the part of the employees who are being delegated to. But I think that my personal opinion is that the work, the operations in the town hall are an indicator that I am capable and am honing that skill more and more every day.
Steve?
How's town meeting gone for you?
Well.
Well, again, you transitioned from city government to the town meeting.
It's the Super Bowl, right, for any town administrator, because and for the Board of Selectmen, I'm sure as well. But it's the place where most things get done and where the tone is set for the next fiscal year, perhaps as well. And I can tell you that I've had a lot of direct interaction with the town meeting. It changes depending upon the board and whether the board wants to have the direct interaction, but I am very comfortable with answering questions that may come up from the residents at town meeting. I think that I've established enough of a relationship over time that being even tempered, even keeled, having a grasp of the issues that are being discussed, I think that the town meeting, if you were to ask those in a town meeting, they would say that when I speak on an issue that they are receiving the facts that they need to hear, and that it's being presented in an unbiased way. So I very much enjoy the interaction with the town administrator with the town meeting, but I also understand that it varies by the board in terms of what that role is, because there's at times there could be an interest of having direct interaction on the part of the selectmen as well. But I think
You've attended ours.
I have, yes, I have attended 2 of them, I believe, maybe 3 of them, and some of them have fallen on nights when I've had other obligations. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to make it, but I have attended yours, yes.
Entertaining nonetheless.
Very informative. Very informative. It's an interesting role to be in the back of the auditorium rather than in the front for it.
Any more follow-up? Jeff, you had this additional question. You want to ask that?
Yes,
or not?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, during the process, from the moment that you became aware of this, the position being open to right here, my question is just, have you experienced or identified any conflict of interest that you might have, perceived or otherwise? And if so, what is it, and how would you address that?
I think that you, I guess I shouldn't make any assumptions, but I think I've been on the sidelines here in North Reading. My involvement is largely been incidental more than anything, at least in my own opinion. So I cannot identify any immediate conflict that would be there. There could be project-specific items that came up. So, for example, if there's an issue that's going to be done on my road, then I'm probably in a situation where I'm going to be advised to recuse myself from any discussion by the board on it. I consider the conflict of interest law. I know that at times people believe that it's very it's very regimented and strict, but I think it's what preserves the integrity of what town government does. And there have been opportunities where in Tingsboro, if I've sensed there may be even a perception, I have disclosed and stepped away from an item because I think it needs to be that. And I would do the same thing here. If there were an issue on my road, whether it be repair work or otherwise, that needed to be addressed, it was a recommendation, I would recuse myself from it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
In your, I'm sorry, Joe?
No,
Okay. Just in your decision to apply for the position, you're obviously living and working in the same community. For an individual in this position, it can be a double-edged sword. What was the thought process, maybe discussion with your wife? Is that really what you're looking for?
There was a discussion in at home with those who I consider provide counsel, but it was even an item that came up during the interview with the screening committee as well. And I guess my response to that is, and I wrote this in my cover letter to the board, to the screening committee as well, I really think that to do the job properly, it is a vocation. It is a job that you need to throw everything into it. I don't know many town administrators that have a lot of hobbies or otherwise, and it's because it's very demanding in terms of on your time. I enjoy engaging with people. I enjoy listening, speaking with residents. I know that a lot of times it's complaints that might be brought up, but I don't shy away from it. I don't shy away from the conversation. Something that I very much am comfortable with. Will there be an impact? Sure, there would be an impact, but the opportunity, again, as I stated at the beginning, to contribute here in North Reading, where I hope to be for a long time with my family, is one that those are minor things that would come up in terms of what the long-term benefit is for myself personally. And I've been fortunate to have full support at home as well.
Good.
Michael, it's your turn to ask questions that you might have from the board, rather,
Thank you, Mr.
Both.
Chairman.
entirely or individually.
I would ask, and if you're willing, Mr. Chairman, to allow the members to each answer, what each member believes they are looking for in the next town administrator. I should ask it this way, what's the most important thing that they're looking for? I think
Okay.
that's...
Start with Mr. Fode.
We had a discussion, Michael, you pointed out what I do for a living for the last almost 25 years. You know, I've been a municipal employee, and I worked for the State House, as you did. I think the most important thing is communication. I think communication with the members of the board, communication with your staff, and reaching out to not only stakeholders who have an interest in a certain issue, but also to all residents in the town. I think it's a responsibility of the town administrator to make sure that people see him around town, people know who he is, and people have access to him to a certain extent. I mean, I don't expect people to just come in here at any time. You're busy enough as it is, but if someone has a legitimate issue that they need to discuss, it may not be a bad idea to allow them that opportunity. But most importantly is, and you pointed out several times, that communication is very important. So that's what I'm looking for.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Fode. I think communication is the number one thing. I think it alleviates a lot of problems. I think it takes away a lot of suspicions. But I think communication between us and the town administrator is one part, but it's that communication of what we do in here on Monday evenings is very important, that it gets communicated amongst the staff. I think that's a big part of it, because we try to invest our time and our energy, and we work with you directly, or you may work a lot with the chairman, but that information has to get filtered through the department heads, from the department heads down to the employees, and there has to be that line of communication. We have to, we typically here in this town, we meet with the staff once a year, and that's during the budget session. So one time I get to see them, and it's kind of unfortunate, but I understand it. They need to do their job. They don't need to see me around bugging them. But I think it's important to have that communication so they know what the pressing issues are and how they can contribute. And so, feed on that. I understand, and Mr. Fode did a great job explaining the communication with us, but the communication needs to be
across the board.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Leary?
Communication is important, but, to me, the town administrator needs to be the professional that we're hiring here. You're going to be in charge of running the day-to-day operations, and really the position is, to me, the anchor within the community in relation to continuity. And you're going to have a whole bunch of ideas. The names and faces up here change periodically, sometimes more often than others, but they change periodically. And it's the town administrator's position, and the way the charter is designed, to help lend some continuity to the community. So again, we need the person to be a professional, not a politician. There are some political decisions that need to be made, leave that to the politicians. But give you guidance, give you a professional opinion on things as to how things should progress. And again, not all decisions that are made are going to be mostly the most efficient way of handling it. Sometimes there are political discussions that need to take place in order to get the community's buy-in to certain things. So it's, you have to assist this board, not just to follow public opinion. I mean, we're the ones who are volunteering and putting the hundreds and thousands of hours in here to get the background information on the issue. So it's not just to follow public opinion, it's just as important to help formulate public opinion. And I think over the years, we've had some success with people in the position that you're vying for here that help us sell our ideas and our strategic plan and getting people to invest in their community through their tax dollars in order to move things ahead. And I think that the town administrator really does assist significantly in lending the credibility, whether it be a project, an idea, or the board itself. So, yes, communication is important, but again, the trust that you build up and confidence within the community can only assist the board here.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Yule?
The TA is probably the most difficult job in town. You have to not only work with the board, you have to work with your subordinates, direct subordinates, I should say. So is there an echo here?
I guess that's the
It's
speaker.
the speakers.
I
Okay.
told you I haven't heard
We just
that.
like hearing you twice, Jeff.
Hey, can't get any better than that. So I can appreciate the position that you're accepting. The only one difficulty between yours and mine is I don't get paid and you do, so you went up on us on that. So what I look for from a TA, when he has to balance what we are looking to accomplish versus what your ideas are and your suggestions are, is that I'm looking for a TA to be candid, direct, tell us what we need to know, not what we want to hear. And let us, if we're not hearing what you're saying, do your best to make sure that we understand what you're trying to accomplish. Because if we go off on a tangent to what your suggestions are, and we don't come to some mutual understanding of what the best route to take, I think it's very, very difficult. Makes the job, everything very difficult. So that's what I look for, candidness, directness, tell us what we need to know, and help us.
Sure. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I think, from my perspective, and I think in the best interest of the community, there's a few words, and right on the top is leadership. That's across the board. Honesty, transparency, someone that can gain respect of the board, of the community, of all of our employees. And somebody that puts quality into their effort. And I was speaking to one of your references, I won't mention the gentleman's name, but I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, when he told me that he got booted out of his fancy office at the State House, and he got moved into a smaller office, and you and some fellow associates that were working for him at the time, I think when you were in school, came in on the weekend and kind of polished up the little office that he ended up with. I was very impressed over that. And to me, that's related to quality of effort. It was important, it was something that it was done in your own time. You saw the importance of it. It made an everlasting impression. He's still talking about it. I think that's, in a nutshell, what we're looking for. Someone with the character that embodies all of those words.
I appreciate that, thank you. May I ask another question?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see, and I'm sensing from the comments, and I sensed from the publication that the Collins Center put together that the board was looking for someone who would be willing to take on a visible leadership role in the community. And I can tell you that that is something that has happened, I think, organically in Tingsboro for me. And I think that if you were to ask residents on the street what their opinion was, I think it would be overall favorable of individuals. And that's because I have put in the time to establish relationships with the entities that are involved in town government that might not necessarily be the traditional entities, whether it's just attending a meeting of a conservation commission, just to understand what's going on in their world. It's something that I'm committed to, and again, I think in order for the town administrator to work effectively with the board, the town administrator has to understand what the perspective of the community is as a whole. And that's not to say it's necessarily the town administrator's role to dictate what happens because of that, but that it just allows the town administrator and the board members to be on the same page, because I'm sure you'll be hearing it, and you are hearing it day in and day out, and if the town administrator is doing their job, they're paying attention to it as well. But I think I'm sensing the board is comfortable with a town administrator who is perhaps out in front on matters that are going on, and the board's comfortable with that. Am I getting that correct read?
Yes.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That is good to know, and I think it's important for you to know that that is a role that I am comfortable with. I enjoy engaging with individuals, and that's something that I would welcome.
You have any further questions?
I guess.
Closing statement.
Could I ask one more question?
Oh,
Yeah, some more questions.
oh, I'm sorry.
I guess
Misunderstood.
the question I would ask, in the opinion, is there a consensus? I'll ask it this way because I know you've spent a lot of time this evening. Is there a consensus on the board as to, besides the appointment of a town administrator, what the number one issue facing this community is today or will be for the next year?
Any one issue? I think there's difficulty in identifying any one issue is one we can address in 1 year. I mean, we have a whole, if I might, Mr. Chairman, we have a whole host of issues, and again, the long-term ones are of course, the water, the sewer issue,
Mhm.
and economic development, and promoting that in order to get some property tax relief for the homeowners. And that's going to take a lot of money and investment in going out and trying to sell that to the community after we've just invested in the high school, and people are experiencing anywhere from $900 to several thousands of dollars a year for the next 25 years on their tax bill. So the challenge is, moving forward with our plans, at least getting things established into place here so that we can move if an opportunity provides, the opportunity provides itself here, or comes up, we can move on it rather than ignoring it. But at the same time, the fiscal reality of doing things, and how do we manage what we have and make the best of it going forward?
Sure. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think to me, it's pretty simple. It's money. It's always our problem, and I think this town has done an excellent job up till now to meet our budgets and our needs. I think we've spent a lot of our one-time monies now. I think we have a lot of funds that we've reduced to levels where I think we're approaching the uncomfortableness. So to me, it's about money. How do we create these new revenues? How do we, just because we're a town without wastewater doesn't mean we can't create new revenues. I'm just not a believer in it. So we have to make that investment as a community in our economic development where we can make some improvements there. But also even look at our current finances and look at how we spend money and where we're spending our money. Is it really in the right places? Can we make some efficiencies? I'm a believer that there are some efficiencies. So you're going to get 5 different answers, I think, on this one. But it's, to me, the number one is money. it's, everything is going up, and the demand is there. The residents are, they're paying a lot of taxes, but I'm not so sure they're actually getting the same level of service they have in the past. I think it's, it's moderately close, but we need to do better. We need to be able to provide better. So, money, help
Sure.
us manage that.
I appreciate that, thank you.
I think, it all comes down to money, there's no question about it. But there are things that can be done, thinking out of the box. Recently, as a result of work that was done with the members of our fire department to go from basic life support to advanced life support, we were able to essentially double the revenue from the ambulance, which is originally aimed to sustain a new ambulance, such that we've been able to add 5 additional firemen to the force at no impact on other services because of the money generated from the new service. So it's that kind of thinking, I think, that we need going forward. And, if you're looking at the very near term, I mean, it's just, looking for other sources of revenue that we can quickly kind of keep the systemic issue of expenses growing at some rate that exceed what we're allowed to tax at Proposition 2.5. And, it goes back to the State House, a lot of this, and the fact that they've shortchanged the communities for a number of years now in terms of local aid and Chapter 70. We lost the Quinn bill reimbursements we were getting, a lot of communities did, and ended up having to deal with those kinds of issues. So we're being shortchanged from the state and limited by Proposition 2.5. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, that part of it. Just finding new sources of revenue gets more and more difficult. We adopted the meals tax, but that's another tax. We have done a few things with the cell tower, which is providing some kind of a revenue stream. But there's more to be done. And, people come on board with ideas, and those ideas generate and grow into things that will help out. And you need someone that's capable of motivating, generating those ideas. And leadership comes back to leadership, comes back to motivating our entire employee work base and motivating the community in terms of getting on board on any specific project that in the long term we might benefit from.
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just in regard to your comments, I think that it goes to the question Mr. O'Leary offered earlier, which is we're not the only community. North Reading is not the only community going through the struggles, the financial struggles, and I think that that's where, again, paying attention to what's going on around us, a town administrator being engaged in conversation with surrounding communities, and the town administration and town managers in those communities, you start to generate discussion about something that's facing every community, and it affects every community in different ways. Some have been able to weather it better than others because of one-time sources being available or other non-recurrent items that might come up and benefit. But I think that paying attention to what's going on regionally is an important part of that. But thank you. I appreciate the answer to the question.
Do you have more questions?
No, I appreciate the responses and your candor in the discussions and in our discussion 2 weeks ago. So I don't think I have any further questions at this point.
Okay, so at this point, you want to make a closing statement? You're welcome to.
Certainly, thank you. I guess first I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to sit here before you and discuss this position, your desires and needs, and where perhaps my qualifications may potentially be able to address those needs. I think I offer the board a unique perspective working in the city of Worcester. I had the experience of working for essentially what is an appointed chief executive officer, and a city manager. Quite a bit of authority in an appointed position. it allows a very formalized and stable governmental structure to exist within the departments, within the city hall, within the operating departments. And so I feel I've been able to take the best of that and understand how what might be some best practices there can apply to a community that might not have necessarily the resources or the size to function in that way. And so I think I having the experience of working in Tingsboro, in a town that's facing many of the same issues that North Reading is facing, but to have that perspective from a city, I think that could be advantageous for the board. I think it has been advantageous for Tingsboro, and it could be advantageous for North Reading. I think it's no secret that I've spoken pretty candidly with the board with regard to my style. Again, I do believe in communication. I think that proper and effective communication makes it that much easier to say no, and that is a big part of the responsibility of the town administrator, whether it's having to say no or no, not at this time to the board, or to say no to an employee, or to say no across the bargaining table. But again, if you've been effective, and I think that I have demonstrated, if you were to ask folks, that I've been good at the communication when it comes to those particular matters. I think that that would be beneficial based on my understanding and your comments and what the board solicited through the Collins Center solicitation. And the final piece that I would state again is that you do have in myself a candidate who is invested in the community, is interested in remaining in the community, and will plans to remain in the community for the long term, regardless of the determinations of the board. So I think that offers a bit of a unique package for a candidate for you to consider. And I greatly appreciate the confidence of the screening committee in forwarding myself to the board, and I wish the board the best and thank it for its considerations, and wish it the best in its deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yes. We're going to take a recess for 10 minutes. Call the meeting back to order. Next step is to discuss our impressions of the two candidates. I think they both did an excellent job, and get down to seeing if we can come to some consensus or majority vote on who we should make an offer to.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, to your point, I was, based on the correspondence that I had with you earlier today, I had anticipated that, and you, by your response, agreed that we would have this discussion on the 19th and then go into executive session following that meeting. And that occurred about 4:15 today, when I sent you the email. I adjusted my day accordingly, and consequently, I'm not at the point where I feel comfortable. And I wish that your response had been a little bit differently, but that's what I was anticipating coming into this meeting.
Well, I apologize for the incorrect response, but I got it at the last minute. It was a result of town council sending the note around. I looked at it quickly. I interpreted it as meaning that you was requesting that there was some confusion as to whether we were going to go to an executive session to debate who we hire. And I had just assumed that you were still concerned about that, and my response to you was basically, we're going to do just that, because I only read a piece of the email, okay? And I'm sorry, but we're doing this tonight. We agreed that we were doing this tonight, and I think it's important that we get this job done and move on to the next stage, which is to negotiate an agreement or a contract with the individual that we appoint.
Well,
And I have been upfront with providing all the information. You have had it in advance. the board even went so far as your request, before you were on this board, to hold off on this thing so that you could participate. Now you must participate.
But, Mr. Chairman, so you're saying that you held off the selection process because of my request? Is that what you're saying?
There was the request of 2 candidates, and a feeling after reconsidering the path that we were on, that it was in the best interest of the community, not specifically you, in the best interest of the community to wait, which we did. Now, with all due respect, I expect that this board tonight debate the candidates that were here and make a choice. And I apologize for a missed email because I didn't read the whole thing. My mistake.
I appreciate you saying that. However, I don't agree that you, your decision to delay this to this, at this point in time, I don't believe that had anything to do with us. I think there was something else that happened, because on Tuesday night of the candidates' night, when I misunderstood the question, that was a surprise bit of information that we received, so it wasn't because of the candidates. There was something else that determined why you did that. I wasn't a member of the board, so I have nothing to do with that. So I guess, but my point here is that after council sent us an email, there was no follow-up to say, okay, this is what we're going to do, since that email was sent. There was no correspondence after that. That's what generated my request to continue with what we were going to do as far as having the interviews were concerned, all right? But on the 19th, to have the deliberation and then go into executive session. And as you said, that's exactly what we were going to do. So I've been working on that premise. Okay, and I think if that happened to anybody else on the board, that wouldn't be appropriate for them either. So that you
I'm
know,
sorry.
So I don't know
Mr.
why
O'Leary.
there was no correspondence after the council sent us that email.
Just in relation to the timeline of things and how we've proceeded, again, the previous board made a decision the Thursday before the election to postpone the interviews until after the election was going to take place, and that the time, date, and place of that was going to be determined once the new board reorganized, which is what we did on the Wednesday after the election. At that meeting, again, I was under the impression, and it hadn't changed, again, I wasn't privy to the email you sent this afternoon to the chairman. I did get the correspondence from town council in relation to what you can discuss in executive session and not. But I didn't see any or anticipate any change in the timeline. When we left that meeting Wednesday, when we reorganized, I was under the impression that we were going to have the interviews and hopefully come to a conclusion in one evening. And that's the last I heard, and I didn't get any other correspondence otherwise. So, I mean, you may have sent something to the chairman this afternoon, which he misunderstood or misinterpreted or didn't read the whole thing, and responded back to you and left you with a false impression. But nothing was said and nothing was communicated to the
Right.
board as a whole in relation to changing the timeline and postponing a decision to another date. So, I mean, I was prepared to interview,
Mhm.
listen, and hopefully come to a decision this evening.
Right.
So again, even if the chairman had answered your email in the manner which you found to be appropriate at the time, it wasn't communicated with any other
Right.
members of the board, because that wasn't the impression, that wasn't
Mhm.
the game plan. So, I guess,
I mean,
accept the chairman's apology, I
chairman
suppose,
has-
but the explanation is, nothing had changed, in my estimation.
Right, I do understand that, the chairman has the right to do what he feels is appropriate as chairman. I have no complete.
No, I think if that were going to be changed, that wouldn't be the chairman's decision. Because we had already made a determination and taken a vote that this is what we were going to do. And in order for that to be changed, it would have to be an action of the
Well,
board, not the
but
chairman.
by the council's email,
The
Saying what we
council's
can do,
email
so-
was a caution that,
Be careful what you talk about in executive session.
Right,
You can talk
exactly.
about contract language and things of
Right.
that nature in relation to, he believes, in relation to whomever you choose. but not necessarily to discuss the merits of the candidates. And again, I have a little difference of opinion, but I don't have a problem with what we're going to do anyway.
And so the change was,
Yeah.
the recommendation of the change that was in my head was, and when I responded to your email, was related to that piece of it, was that originally, we talked about interviewing, going into executive session for the purpose of looking at the contract stuff, and then
Right.
coming out and just
And
making,
deliberating.
deliberating and making a decision on the candidates. And it was recommended by council, right, one, that, you know, we
Be
can't
careful.
discuss, debate the candidates in executive session, but it would not look good because we went in and then came out. So he was making a recommendation that we, although it was okay to do what we said we were going to do from the point of view, it would look good and it would raise suspicion. So
All right.
when when I saw that email, that first piece of it sort of said, we're not going to do the executive session, or I don't remember exactly what it said, and I reacted to it by saying, yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do, without reading the rest of the email, and I apologize for being careless. I was probably in a hurry, and you know, with that, I'd like to
I
move
appreciate,
forward.
yeah, we can move forward. Just want to know, we're going to go into executive session tonight, right? Correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
For discussions of contracts only.
Of course, yeah.
And I believe I took the three contracts, I summarized three contracts being Greg's. Actually, it's two contracts, and Mr. Durgan doesn't have a current contract. He's, you know, a salaried employee, period. I put that information together just so that it would be easier to look at all the things and make those decisions at the appropriate time. So I'd like to open the discussion up regarding the two candidates. And who would like to start? Have any volunteers? Mr. O'Leary?
Again, I want to thank the search committee. Again, I didn't necessarily get the number of candidates that I was looking for, but the two candidates and finalists that they presented for our deliberations are excellent. I mean, I think we would be well served by either one of them. It just comes down to, you know, what do we feel is going to be the best fit for the community at this particular point in time and going forward, looking forward. And again, I did call the references, and of course, as I expected, the references would be good, which they were. I did have the advantage of knowing some other people that knew some of these individuals that I took advantage of and called to, and again, the response was extremely favorable on both of them. You know, as I look at where we are today, what the community needs as a whole, but also what Town Hall would need as far as a leader, and looking long-term, at this particular point in time, I'm leaning towards the local candidate, let's put it that way, the gentleman who lives in town. And he has the requisite experience. I think whatever he's doing up in Tingsboro transitions nicely here to North Reading. It's a very similar community. And a lot of the things that they're experiencing, we're experiencing too. So he's been dealing with the issues firsthand, again, and talking with the chairman of the board there and another member of the board up there, and looking at the online reports in relation to his candidacy here. The comments of the board members there was extremely supportive of his efforts to come to North Reading, but very sad that he's even considering leaving. And I'm heartened by the fact that both candidates, neither one of them, when I asked them both during the tour that we had, that they hadn't applied anywhere else. You know, they were interested in North Reading and North Reading only. Says volumes about both candidates. I just, at this particular juncture, it's been a long time since we've had a town administrator that lived in town. And as I asked in my question to Mr. Gilberto, you know, it's a double-edged sword. Are you ready for it, and is it okay? It really can be. But we saw just south of the border here, Mr. Heckenbleckner was in 1984. I think he got appointed down in Reading and lived and worked in the community, and it worked very well. I see Mr. Gilberto, again, as having a vested interest as a homeowner here, but also has two very small children and will soon be, you know, on the ball fields, in the schools, engaging within the community, and I see that as a positive. Many times, we've seen town administrators who, again, spend an inordinate amount of time in town hall, and may go out and speak to the Chamber of Commerce or get involved with Rotary or things of that nature, but to get a good sense and pulse of the community, if you're living in it and you're breathing it and you're paying the taxes and you're feeling the same pain as everybody else, I think I think it could be very valuable. And I look at Mr. Gilberto as someone who would be, certainly potentially a long-term town administrator here. So my general impressions right now, again, we'd be well served by either one. Again, Mr. Durkin, very articulate, knowledgeable, has a little bit more experience in the field of municipal government, primarily in city government, as opposed to small-town communities with town meetings, formal government, not quite there, but again, I'm sure he's quite capable of coming up to speed and acclimating himself well also. But again, Mr. Gilberto has the requisite current experience, come and hit the ground running in an environment that we currently live under. So that's my general impression in relation to where I'm leaning right now.
Next. Anyone want to jump up before I start picking somebody?
No, I'll take the opportunity.
Okay.
Coming in today, I did my due diligence as well, and I would...
Michael, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Coming in today, over the last several days, I definitely spent the time and the energy to really do my research, connect with people that know both of these individuals outside of the references that were provided, and I got the same results as Mr. O'Leary did. So coming in today, I struggled. I was struggling because they're both excellent candidates. They both deserve to be here and have this opportunity, and we are extremely fortunate. And obviously, this is the great work of the selection committee to get us down to these two excellent candidates. Nothing tonight blew my socks off for us, one more than the other, which made it even more harder because they were both excellent. It does lead me to believe that the experience of Mr. Gilberto and the current situation he is tends to make me lean that way a little bit more. But one of the, I guess, deciding factors in my mind is the little things. I've learned over the years, I think the little things that matter. I saw some things tonight, and that's where it really forced me, but these candidates being so close qualified, that to me it comes down to the little things. And I see and hear the way both of them acted. I really believe Mr. Gilberto's way of listening and the time he took to listen and to answer, it just, I felt comfortable. And knowing the staff and knowing the town that we have, I think that's going to be a big factor. I'm not saying that Mr. Durkin had a limitation there. He didn't. It's just, to me, trying to find one or two things, distinguished things that help me make my determination is now it's coming down to the little things. And I think based on the personalities of the town, based on the personalities of this board, based on the personalities of the community and our staff, I am going to put my support behind Mr. Gilberto as our next town administrator at this point.
Jeff? Joe?
Yeah, I'll go. I'm not sure which way to go on this. I think both Steve and Mike, hit the nail on the head. They both appear to be good candidates. One seems to have a demeanor that's a little bit more soft and approachable, and one seems to be more like a Joe Sargent by comparison. They both seem to know what they were talking about. In reading the information that I did have, I don't think there's a question of their capabilities in that regard. But I did, aside from that, I did have a concern about the whole process, and that process, good, bad, or indifferent, and that's a subjective, point of view, and I understand that. I wasn't a fan of the process overall. I think that using the Collins Center was an excellent idea in the area of expertise and what they do professionally was very helpful. What I think should have happened, it should have come directly, the results should have come from the Collins Center directly to the Board of Selectmen, and they should have worked it from that vantage point. I'm not going to go into a whole long description of reasoning and so on, because it'll take too much time. But that being said, I think that as far as the candidates, I think this board worked really hard, plus the former member Sean Delaney worked very hard to make sure that the process and the person that they wanted, not they want, that's the wrong term, well, that the right person came forward. I think they worked very hard in that. So I'm going to abstain at this point from making a selection. And I think that you all can feel proud of what you've done, what you from your advantage point. I have to respect that, so I'm going to respect that. So I'm going to abstain at this point.
Can I say something?
Maybe after
Probably
everyone
wishing-
else has a say.
Probably wishing you didn't right now.
Yeah.
You might wanna.
Joe.
I don't think we could have found two better candidates. I think they both have they both have more strengths than weaknesses, and they both have different strengths. Some similar, but mostly different. And I think it's all about trying to find, as everybody else said, the best fit for the town. I need to come away from this for a second and just talk about the process, because the process, based on the process we did, we hired the Collins Center, and for the most part, we used the process that they had recommended to us. They had recommended a separate screening committee, and again, I don't think I've worked with a better committee in the 2 years or even number of years that I've been involved in anything in North Reading than that committee. I mean, they were professional, they were great. No one had any ulterior motives but to make sure that we submitted the best candidates for the job to the Board of Selectmen. So as far as the process goes, I think it was a phenomenal process. And Jeff, don't take this personally, I'm a little taken back by the fact that you're abstaining, because we held off waiting for the newly elected selectmen. Steve wanted that from day one, and originally it didn't happen. After some further discussion and several things that happened, Sean Delaney actually contacted each of us and said, maybe it's a good idea that you guys do hold off. So, again, this isn't a shot at you, Jeff, but it's more of a, this could have been resolved 2 weeks ago then, 2 weeks ago, had we not decided to wait for the new selectman to come on board. Not at the request, but it was requested by both of the candidates that we held off, because they felt that we were rushing it and weren't doing the right thing, and I think at some point, Mr. Delaney decided to acquiesce to that. As far as the candidates go, I said last week that I think, in an effort to not further put any cloud over this whole process, that I would love to see a consensus of the board, and hopefully we could all come to the same decision and allow that person to go into this position knowing that they had the full support of the board. So I am torn right now. I think they're both phenomenal candidates. So based on that, I'm willing to listen to what everybody else has to say. We know where Mr. O'Leary and Mr. Briscoe are leaning. So I guess I'm willing to hear what you have to say, Bob, and then move on from there.
Well, clearly, we had two great candidates. They didn't disappoint. I think they're both skilled gentlemen in their own right. I think you're right, Joe, that there are certain experiences and skills one has over the other. I think it's all about the best fit for our community and the time that we're in. And you know, this is, it's so close. It makes the decision all the harder, right? Steve makes a good point about Mr. Gilberto living in town. Of course, Mr. Durkin only lives down the street from us too, if you think about it. Although the engagement, being in town, being involved in things, clearly is easier for one candidate than the other. What I find most interesting is a committee, a screening committee, going through all these resumes, never discussing how far someone lived away from the community, that we end up with the two, what we thought to be, and what we believe to be the two best candidates living so close. Where in the past, you know, we even had a couple candidates apply, not that they were even considered to be interviewed, not because of distance, but because of their background, from Texas, you know.
Tough commute.
Yeah. I too am leaning toward Mr. Gilberto. I kind of like for the same things that Steve had brought up. I you know, at a point there was one question, and I just was wondering whether he was going to answer it, you know, and I think he was just thinking about the best approach. There were a couple of other things that he did I thought were quite impressive. Now, that being said, Mr. Durkin is very articulate. I mean,
He is,
and
extremely.
it made it difficult. I think you had to look through some of that to, you know, it could be, you know, if you're not looking at the subtle things of making the best fit, you know, his articulation and how he handled himself tonight was, you know, just outstanding. I thought Mr. Gilberto got off to a little slower start, which he didn't do in a screening committee, but then once he got engaged in the communication, that all went away. So right now I'm leaning, I'm ready to support Michael Gilberto.
I have an opportunity to speak now. Is it?
Related to our discussion on this?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
somewhat related, and it's somewhat related to Mr. Ewell as well. I think,
Oh, related to his fact that
yes,
he's...
because it's related to this.
Okay, all right.
Jeff?
Personalities.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can kind of understand why you're considering abstaining from this. But, you know, in your words, you know, throughout your candidates night now, you kept repeating how the town administrative position is the most important position in town. And I agree with you. And I think the people that just voted you in, they deserve your vote on this. And I think the new town administrator coming in deserves your vote on this. I think abstaining, it's owed to the residents, your input. You owe it to them, I believe. I'm not trying to press you into something, but you made such great points about this. And, you know, I was not in favor of waiting. But after, you know, when Mr. O'Leary did, he advocated very strongly waiting. And, you know, and over time, speaking with at the time Chairman Delaney, you know what, it did make sense. It did. I was okay with it. And I'm glad we made it. I'm actually glad all five of us are here. But it would really be, I think, a negative if not all five of us voted. And I'd ask you to please reconsider your decision, Jeff, because you've been around town a long time. Thankfully, and I want to thank you for making the time when you weren't even a selectman at the time, but you made the time, and you went on those tours with us, with both candidates. You asked some great questions and participated. And I think, hopefully from that, and the time you've had to read up and be here tonight and participate, will give you enough to reconsider. That's all I have to say.
Well, I appreciate that, Mike. You know, thank you. It's a thought process that I've been going through since I've been getting the information. I had a concern with each candidate. I was, you know, this goes into that discussion. If we had a third candidate, that would, I think, help at least me along with the process. I don't concur with the philosophy that having someone live in the community is good. He answered my question perfectly, actually, about conflicts, okay? And so he answered it as it should have been. My concern with a candidate living in town is subject to things that I can't even imagine at this moment, okay? Criticism, abuse, he has, I think he has a 6-month-old, is that correct? His young children?
He's got, I think, a 2-year-old,
Yeah.
2-year-old and a 3-month-old.
Right, something like that,
6-month-old, right.
and I can just see the TA out in the soccer field or whatever the case might be, and somebody coming up to him and then just giving him a hard time. And that creates a problem for someone to do their job, and that's a conflict that concerns me. With Mr. Durkin, his position at the MWRA, that's a concern, that I have. I mean, obviously, I can't say to you that, and I wouldn't say that these conflicts would necessarily obscure their decisions, okay? But they're still there. Had I had a third candidate, and had it been a candidate that didn't live in town, and was not part of had no connection to town whatsoever, I'd be more apt to vote for that kind of person, okay? Because that, to me, that represents more of an objective perspective. So that, I wouldn't want them to live far away, but not Texas anyway. But so that to me, when I did my little check marks, that bounced them out for me. All right, and we got to this point because of the process. And when I looked at the process, I said I think it would have worked better had we done it direct from the Collins Center to the Board of Selectmen. So that's an opinion. I hope you respect my opinion as much as I do yours. So that's why I chose to abstain, because the candidate that I think that should be there isn't available. All right, but that doesn't mean I would not work with those candidates. I mean, whoever becomes a TA, they're both capable of doing the job. One perhaps better than the other, and vice versa. But that's the reasoning behind. I did not know, with regard to the decision to delay the interview process. I did not know that until Thursday morning. I did not know that. I didn't pick it up on the Q&A that night, but I didn't know it until Thursday morning.
Steve contacted Mr. Smith, is that correct?
What did we say? Yeah, I believe.
What?
No,
No, it's a night.
no. That was in relation to when they could meet.
Oh, I'm
no,
sorry, that was afterwards.
When I
You're
read
right,
it
you're
in the
right.
paper,
No,
that was
you're right,
really the
you're
first
right.
time.
Jeff missed Bob's point at candidates night. That's all.
That's
He
right.
missed the point. That's what happened. It was disclosed at candidates night.
Okay, but it didn't, I'm sorry, go
But
ahead.
it didn't resonate with you.
Right, it didn't
It
resonate
click,
with
you were too
me.
busy.
I knew of no meeting to have occurred to make that decision, all right? So that,
No, we met on Thursday.
We met on Thursday.
night.
Yeah,
That-
Thursday.
that
We were
meeting.
scheduled to
So
meet on
you-
Thursday
you
anyway,
can
but we
see-
Couldn't make the
that.
decision
But-
without the board.
But we had a scheduled meeting, and the agenda item, Jeff, which you attended as your first meeting as the selectman, sworn-in selectman in this room, this was the agenda item, and we worked this all out. There was a lengthy discussion about whether we go into executive session or not, and when we do that. You were part of that discussion.
You're talking about the...
Wednesday, you reorganized.
Yeah.
Reorganization.
So, I think it was very clear, and I thought it was very clear to me, you were part of the process, and you voted part of the process to do what we're doing tonight, and agreed that tonight was the right night to make the
No,
decision.
but I think what he just said was he can't support either candidate, and that's
Well,
why
if
he's
that's,
abstaining.
if that's
Yeah.
where you're going, then let's focus on that,
And that-
rather than
and
talk about the
that's
process.
why-
If he
that's-
can't, then there's no
that's
talking
why
out of it.
I'm abstaining.
Okay, if that's your rationale,
Could-
Mr.
Yes. Mr. Fode.
Yeah.
Just, I'm gonna
comment on two of the things that Jeff brought up. As far as Mr. Gilberto living in town, I trust that he's intelligent enough, and he's done a lot of thinking about it, and knows, he knows the advantages and disadvantages of living where you work. I did it for 14 years. It was not a pleasure. Doesn't mean that someone else can't be successful at it. I can't hold that against him. I can't hold the fact that he is making a choice to live where he works. That's his decision. It's his life, and I can't take away from the fact that he's an excellent candidate and that he lives in town. That being said, I don't quite understand how the fact that Mr. Durkin works at MWRA is a disadvantage, other than the fact that we're going to try at some point, maybe, get water from the MWRA. But if that's the case, and if we choose to go that route, I look at it as an advantage. I'm not saying I'm leaning that route, but I'm just addressing the two issues that you brought up that you felt were negatives.
Mr. O'Leary. Help, please.
Help, please, yeah. As far as the process is what it is, and it was determined by the previous board as to how we were going to go forward. You weren't sitting here, you didn't have your input, and we all agreed that this is what the process was going to be. Now, I had some concerns in relation to the number of candidates that were going to be presented to us that I brought up prior to, we found it was 2. I just had 1 to 3 to 5. We put in the profile, and that's what we did. I'm over it. I was over it when I articulated my position, and I'm over it. The process worked very well, and we had 2 very qualified candidates that were presented to us for consideration. And to Joe's point too, as far as, Mr. Durkin, again, very articulate individual, experienced. To me, either one, I'd be fine. I think the MWRA is probably a plus, not a minus, a negative in relation to any type of outreach we may be looking to have going forward, because we need water. But that being said, in relation to the timing and where we are tonight, and Jeff, I can only impress upon you that I was the lone voice for a while, and I did not ask this board to change their position. They came to that conclusion, and someone else made the motion, and someone else seconded it, and unanimously, it was determined the Thursday before the election to postpone the decision-making process until after the election, and once we reorganized that evening to determine with the newly elected board member as to when and how we were going to proceed. And that's what we did. What we did that night, with you being present and participating, was we determined that tonight was the night. I hadn't heard anything else otherwise. Aside from how town council suggested we handle it, there was no other discussion. And I was under the impression this is what we're going to do. Now, whether you think there should be a third candidate here or not, you're not going to get one. And one of these 2 gentlemen is going to be our next town administrator. And I think it's important for you to weigh in on those choices. The previous board determined that it was important for whoever was going to be sitting here to be a participant and participate in the deliberations and make a decision on behalf of the community to do it. I think it's incumbent upon you to do that. Because you don't have a third choice. It's not like we have a bad choice. We have good choices. And again, I can jump on your bandwagon as far as being critical of different aspects of things. I'm over it. I'm feeling pretty good. And again,
Good for you.
no, really. And again, both candidates very qualified. I just think at this particular junction, this point in time, I think Mr. Gilberto best suits our needs and would fit the position well at this particular point in time. And that's why I'm ready to move forward and make the decision. I agree with the rest of the board members too. The new person coming in here hopefully will have the unanimous support of the board.
So
Not just we promise, but with a vote, with the determination, you have the unanimous support of the board, and we're willing to work together, come to a contract agreement with you, and let's move on and get this thing going. And I would hope that you would exercise your right to represent people of the community by making a choice of what was put before us.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and to try to answer your question, all right, as best as I can, what you're really asking me, you're looking for a unanimous vote. That's what you said?
No, I'm looking for you, no, I'm looking for you to make a
Okay.
choice between the two candidates, and I'm
Well,
hoping
choice.
it's unanimous.
Well, okay, but that's not quite.
It doesn't
what
have
you
to
said.
be.
We're looking for a unanimous support for the new candidate, all right? When I look at this, and so far from what I can see, everyone, I don't know, Joe, you haven't made your decision, right, correct? All right, okay.
I'm waiting for you.
He's like me,
I may abstain.
Abstaining does not mean that you're against or for somebody, okay? But voting for or against somebody does. All right, so abstaining is a neutral ground, and I'd rather take a neutral ground on this. I think the board's decision on who it is, whether it's 4-0 or 3-1, whatever the case might be. All right, I think it's important that you do that. For me, I don't want to be in a position here to vote to send a message that maybe the candidate got in on a 3-2 vote. I don't want to send that kind of message to a candidate. All right, I do agree that if we could come up to a unanimous decision, that's probably the perfect thing to do. However, you can still come out with a perfect result by me abstaining. You can still do that. So that's my perspective.
Let's move on.
So we'll make a
I'm not
motion.
voting against Mr. Durkin. I'm voting for Mr.
So make a
Gilberto.
motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move that the board enter into discussions for the purposes of offering a contract to,
Should we not just move to nominate?
You have to nominate.
Yes.
And we vote, because there may be someone else nominating someone else. I don't,
Yes, I agree.
no,
I
I just
don't.
say, no, I just say that I move that
That's a
we-
nomination, what do you
Yeah,
say?
but I moved to enter into contract negotiations with Michael Gilberto, the
Okay.
next town
Yeah,
administrator,
but
okay, all right, it'll come out the same way, one
And
way or
then-
the other.
whatever
Yeah,
it is
if
it is.
it
I'm gonna
gets
second.
turned down, then we...
I second.
We have a motion by Mr. O'Leary, seconded by Mr.
Prisco.
Prisco.
And I'm sorry, I made the motion, but it's over discussion. Joe, we didn't hear from you, but I don't know if you want to
Take the roll.
weigh in.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
can you open it for discussion?
We've had a long discussion, but I'll open it for
Well, that's usually
discussion,
the
okay.
process,
All right,
okay. My intent is to vote for going into the executive session as presented.
No, that's not the motion I made. That's not, the motion I made was to offer a contract,
Enter into negotiations.
Okay.
into
Gotcha.
negotiations for a contract for
Okay,
Mr.
my mistake.
Gilberto. Yep.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second.
Can we get a roll call?
Roll call vote.
Let's get a roll call vote.
Okay, roll call. Mr. O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Yule.
Abstain.
Mr. Prisco.
Aye.
Mr. Fode.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's 4-0, one abstention.
Mr. Chairman, I move to enter into executive session for the purposes of collective bargaining negotiations and return to open session for the sole intent of adjournment.
Second? Do we hear a
Second.
second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Prisco. All in favor?
Aye.
That's a roll call.
That's a roll call.
A roll call for
Yeah.
executive session, so.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
I'm
it's a
sorry.
roll call,
Mr.
yeah.
O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Yule.
Aye.
Mr. Prisco.
Aye.
Mr. Fode.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Delaney?
audience.
Excellent choice. Good night. Nice job.
Thank you.